SOVNGARD'S Last Song. Chapter 1. The Hall of Valor. The mead flowed like water in Shor's great hall, golden and sweet, filling horn after horn as warriors laughed and sang and boasted of battles long past. Fires roared in massive hearths along the walls, casting dancing light across tables laden with feasts that never emptied. The very air seemed to shimmer with ethereal light, filtered through windows of stained glass that depicted the greatest moments in Nordic history. This was SOVNGARD, the warrior's paradise. And in Shor's hall, the Hall of Valor, the greatest heroes of Nordic history gathered in eternal celebration. Ysgramor sat at a place of honor near the head of the longest table, his massive frame dwarfing even the heroic warriors who surrounded him. His legendary battle-axe, Wuthred, rested against his chair, its edge still gleaming with a keenness that had cleaved through countless elven necks in life. His beard, once red as flame but now white as snow, was braided intricately, adorned with small tokens that commemorated his greatest victories. And then, he roared, his voice carrying through the hall. When the last of the snow elves thought he had escaped, I pulled him from his hiding place by his pointed ears and showed him the faces of my 500 companions before sending him to whatever cursed afterlife awaits his kind. Uproarious laughter greeted this conclusion, and warriors pounded the table in appreciation. Mead sloshed from overfilled horns, adding to the countless stains that marked the ancient wood, badges of honor in this hall of perpetual feasting. Ysgramor lifted his own drinking horn, easily the size of a small shield, and drained it in a single draught before slamming it down on the table. A serving maiden, herself a shield maiden who had fallen honorably in battle centuries ago, immediately filled it again from a seemingly bottomless pitcher. "A tale well told, old harbinger," said Feldir the Old, seated across from him. The ancient mage who had helped banish Alduin the World-Eater in ages past stroked his long beard thoughtfully. "Though I seem to recall you telling it differently the last dozen times." "Details change in the telling," Ysgramor replied with a dismissive wave. "The glory remains the same." Feldir chuckled. "Indeed, and we have eternity to perfect our tales." Another warrior further down the table, Olaf One-Eye, once High King of Skyrim, raised his horn. "I would hear again how you came to Tamriel, Harbinger, of the return from Atmora, when you brought humanity back to claim what was rightfully ours." Ysgramor's eyes gleamed at the request. It was his favorite tale, the foundation of all that had come after. How he had led the remnants of his people back from the frozen continent of Atmora to reclaim Skyrim from the elves who had betrayed and slaughtered the first human settlers. But before he could begin, a subtle change swept through the Hall of Valor. The fires in the hearths flickered, though no draught disturbed them. The endless songs that filled the air faltered for just a moment. The mead in every horn seemed to darken ever so slightly before returning to its golden hue. The warriors fell silent, each sensing the disturbance in their paradise. Ysgramor's hand moved instinctively to Wuthred's haft, closing around it with the familiarity of centuries. At the far end of the hall, upon a throne that somehow always seemed both present and absent, visible only when one focused directly upon it, a figure stirred. Tall and powerfully built, clad in armor fashioned from materials unknown to mortal smiths, his face obscured by a hood that seemed to contain a universe of stars. Shor, the Lord of SOVNGARD, rarely manifested fully in his own hall. His presence was typically felt rather than seen, an essence that permeated every corner of this realm. Yet now he had taken form, risen from his throne, and the entire hall watched in reverent silence. "He comes!" Shor's voice resonated not just through the air, but through the very souls of all present. "The devourer of worlds approaches the borders of our realm." Murmurs rippled through the gathered warriors. Ysgramor stood, Wuthred raised in salute to his lord. Who approaches, Lord Shor? What enemy dares threaten SOVNGARD? Shor's hooded face turned toward the first harbinger. One you never faced, Ysgramor of Atmora. One who was banished before your time by those who wielded powers now lost. His gaze shifted to Feldir, but not unknown to all here. Feldir paled, his ancient features suddenly grave. Alduin, the World Eater has returned. Yes, the single word seemed to darken the hall further. Cast adrift in time by your elder scroll, he has found his way back to the present age. And now, before facing the world of the living, he seeks to regain his strength. Here, in SOVNGARD, by devouring the souls of the honored dead. A chorus of outraged shouts and oaths filled the hall. Warriors reached for weapons. Shield siblings grouped together instinctively, preparing for battle as they had in life. Ysgramor's voice rose above the din. Then we shall face him as we faced all enemies in life, with steel in our hands and courage in our hearts. Shor raised a hand, and immediate silence fell. It is not so simple, Harbinger. Alduin is no mere adversary to be overcome by valor and martial skill. He is the firstborn of Akatosh, the Endmaker, foretold to devour the world at the end of days. His coming was prophesied, as was his defeat, but not at your hands. Whose then? Demanded Olaf One-Eye, his single eye blazing with indignation. Who among the living could stand against a foe that we, the greatest warriors of all ages, cannot? The Dragonborn, Feldir said quietly. Only one with the soul and blood of dragons can truly defeat the World Eater. That was true in our time, when we could only banish him temporarily, and it remains true now. Shor nodded, his hood shifting to reveal glimpses of cosmic depths within. A Last Dragonborn walks the realm of the living even now, following the path of destiny toward a confrontation with Alduin. But before that final battle, the World Eater seeks to strengthen himself by consuming the souls of the valiant dead. Already he circles above SOVNGARD, claiming those who wander the ethereal mists outside these hallowed walls. Ysgramor's grip tightened on Wuthred until his knuckles whitened. We cannot simply wait within while he hunts our kin outside. There must be something we can do. There is, Shor said, his form seeming to grow both more substantial and more ethereal simultaneously. A paradox possible only in this realm beyond mortal understanding. The Dragonborn will come to SOVNGARD to face Alduin. It is written in the Elder Scrolls, foreseen by the divines themselves. But until that moment arrives, we must protect as many souls as we can and prepare this realm for the final battle. The god's presence expanded, filling the hall with power that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Ysgramor, first harbinger, founder of the companions, I name you Shield-Thane of SOVNGARD. Gather a warband from among the greatest heroes here. Venture into the misty valleys beyond the hall and guide lost souls to safety before Alduin claims them. Pride straightened Ysgramor's already impressive posture. I am honored, Lord Shor. I will not fail you. Feldir the Old, Shor continued. You who helped banish Alduin once before, gather those with knowledge of the voice, of magic, of the ancient powers. We must fortify the Hall of Valor against assault from one who embodies the very concept of destruction. The ancient mage bowed his head in acceptance of the charge. And Olaf One-Eye, Shor addressed the former High King, you who once captured a dragon through cunning and strength, organize our defenses. For if the Dragonborn fails or does not arrive in time, we must be prepared to make our stand. Olaf thumped his fist against his chest in salute. It shall be done, my lord. Shor's form began to fade, becoming more impression than image. Make haste. The mists already thicken beyond our walls, Alduin's doing, to confuse and trap the newly fallen before they can reach safety. Go now, with my blessing upon you. As the god's presence receded, the hall erupted into activity. Warriors who had spent countless years, or perhaps mere moments, for time flowed differently in SOVNGARD, in celebration and feasting, now prepared for battle with the efficiency of veterans. Weapons were checked, armor adjusted, battle formations established. Ysgramor stood in the midst of it all, his commanding presence naturally drawing others to him. "I need volunteers," he announced. "Souls brave enough to venture into the mists where Alduin hunts. Our task will be to find those newly arrived in SOVNGARD and guide them safely to the hall." "I stand with you, Harbinger," said a tall woman with fiery red hair and ancient Nordic armor. Mjar Longstride, legendary scout of the 500 companions, who had died covering the retreat of her shield siblings during the early days of the return. "And I," rumbled a mountain of a man whose beard was even more elaborate than Ysgramor's own. Valdemar Strongvoice, whose thumb had been so powerful in life that he had been forced to wear a special amulet to dampen it, lest he accidentally kill those around him when he spoke. One by one, warriors stepped forward, some famous throughout history, others known only for a single great deed, but all proven worthy of SOVNGARD. Within moments, Ysgramor had his warband. 20 heroes representing different eras of Nordic history, but united in courage and purpose. Across the hall, Feldir had gathered a different sort of group. Ancient tongues who had mastered the voice in life, clever mages who had used their arts honorably in battle, priests of Kine who understood the deeper mysteries of the world. They huddled in serious discussion, occasionally gesturing toward the towering walls of the Hall of Valor. Olaf One-Eye had taken command of the rest, organizing them into defensive positions, establishing rotations, identifying the most skilled archers and placing them strategically. The Hall of Valor, designed for eternal celebration, was rapidly transforming into a fortress preparing for siege. Ysgramor gathered his chosen warband near the great doors of the hall. Beyond these doors lies the realm of SOVNGARD, the rolling plains, the towering mountains, the valleys shrouded in mist. Somewhere out there, lost and confused, are the souls of warriors newly arrived from Nirn. Our duty is to find them before Alduin does, and guide them safely here. He hefted Wuthrad, its edge gleaming in the ethereal light. We face no ordinary foe. Alduin is no mere dragon but the World Eater himself. We cannot destroy him. That task awaits the Dragonborn. But we can thwart his purpose, deny him the souls he seeks to devour, and perhaps weaken him before the final confrontation. Mjar Longstride checked her bow, an elaborate creation fashioned from materials found only in SOVNGARD. "How do we fight something we cannot kill, Harbinger?" "We don't fight unless we must," Ysgramor replied grimly. "If confronted directly, we use the voice to stagger him, to confuse him, to buy time for escape. Our mission is rescue, not battle." Valdemar Strongvoice cleared his throat carefully, mindful even in death of his powerful thumb. "And if escape is not possible?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper yet carrying clearly to all. Ysgramor's expression hardened. "Then we stand together, as shield siblings should, and we give such an accounting of ourselves that songs of our valor will be sung even here, in the Hall of Heroes." He looked around at the determined faces of his warband. These were the greatest warriors in Nordic history, souls who had already proven their courage in mortal life. Now, in death, they faced a challenge perhaps greater than any they had known before, confronting the embodiment of the world's end. "Make your final preparations," he commanded. "We leave as soon as Lord Shor's blessing is bestowed." As if summoned by his words, a shimmering presence manifested before the great doors, not the full form of Shor, but an aspect of him, a fraction of divine power concentrated for a specific purpose. The ethereal figure raised both hands, and a shower of golden light cascaded over Ysgramor and his chosen warriors. "Go forth, Shield-Thane and Warband. Shor's voice resonated around them. "My power goes with you, a light in the darkness, a beacon to those lost in the mist. Through you, the worthy dead shall find their way to eternal reward rather than final oblivion in Alduin's gullet." The blessing settled over them like a mantle, a tangible warmth that kindled the soul. Ysgramor felt his already formidable strength increase, his senses sharpen. Looking at his companions, he saw they were likewise affected, each glowing subtly with divine favor. "One final gift," Shor's aspect continued. "While my blessing remains upon you, you cannot be truly devoured by Alduin. Your souls are anchored to this hall to me. Should the worst occur, you will reform here in time, though the experience will not be pleasant." With those less than reassuring final words, the aspect faded, and the massive doors to the Hall of Valor swung open of their own accord. Beyond lay SOVNGARD, but not as they knew it. The familiar landscape was now obscured by a rolling fog that seemed to absorb light rather than merely block it. Through gaps in this unnatural mist, they could see the distant mountains and the great whalebone bridge that crossed the ravine leading to the hall, but these landmarks appeared distorted, as if viewed through troubled water. And somewhere in that mist, the souls of the honored dead wandered, unable to find their way to eternal reward, and Alduin hunted. Ysgramor adjusted his grip on Wuthred and took the first step beyond the threshold. "For SOVNGARD," he said simply, "for honor." His warband followed, weapons at the ready, eyes alert for any movement in the swirling fog. The doors of the Hall of Valor slowly closed behind them, sealing with a sonorous boom that echoed across the ethereal landscape. For a moment they stood in silence, adjusting to the strange conditions. The mist swirled around them, sometimes thinning enough to see several yards ahead, sometimes thickening until each warrior could barely make out their closest companions. "Stay together," Ysgramor commanded. "Form a search line but remain within sight of each other. Imjar, you have the keenest eyes, take the left flank. Valdemar the right. I'll lead the center." They arranged themselves as directed, forming a loose arc with warriors spaced evenly along its length. With Ysgramor at the center, they began to advance away from the Hall of Valor, into the valleys where the mist lay thickest. The normal sounds of SOVNGARD, distant music, the rush of ethereal waterfalls, the calls of spectral birds, were muted, replaced by an oppressive silence broken only by their own movements. Even these seemed deadened, footfalls that should have rustled through the lush grass beneath the mist making barely a whisper. They had traversed perhaps half a mile when Imjar raised her hand in a signal to halt. "Movement ahead," she whispered, pointing toward a deeper shadow within the fog. "Too small for Alduin, likely a lost soul." Ysgramor nodded. "Approach carefully. Remember, those newly arrived may be confused, even frightened. They may not understand where they are or what has happened to them." Imjar advanced slowly, bow ready but not drawn. The others maintained their positions, alert for any sign of danger from other directions. As she neared the shadow, it resolved into a figure, a warrior in ancient Nordic armor, sword drawn and held in a defensive posture. "Stand back," the figure called, voice tinged with fear despite the brave stance. "I know not what manner of spirit you may be, but I warn you, I am Bjarni Ironhelm of Jolvaskr, and I will not be taken without a fight." Imjar lowered her bow completely, raising an empty hand in greeting. "Be at peace, shield brother. I am Imjar Longstride, once of the 500 companions, now of Ysgramor's warband. We come to guide you to safety." The warrior, Bjarni, lowered his sword slightly but remained wary. "What is this place?" I was defending Whiterun against the Stormcloaks. There was an arrow." His free hand moved unconsciously to his throat, where a spectral wound still showed the manner of his death, not yet faded in this newly arrived soul. You are in Sovngarde, the warrior's afterlife, Imjar explained gently. You fell in battle with honor and so have earned your place in the Hall of Valor. But there is danger abroad in the realm now. A dragon unlike any other hunts for souls such as yours. A dragon, Bjarni's eyes widened. Like the black beast that attacked Helgen. Ysgramor, hearing this exchange, approached slowly so as not to startle the newly fallen warrior. Far worse, I fear. Alduin, the World Eater, first of all dragonkind. He extended his hand in warrior's greeting. I am Ysgramor. Bjarni stared in disbelief, his sword lowering completely as recognition dawned. Ysgramor, the Ysgramor, harbinger of the 500. The same, a smile creased Ysgramor's beard. And now Shield-Thane of Sovngarde by Shor's decree. Come, warrior of Jawvaskr, join us, and we will see you safely to the hall where mead and glory await. Bjarni looked as if he might faint, an impressive feat for one already dead. I would be honored. He sheathed his sword and straightened to attention. I place myself under your command, Harbinger. Good man, Ysgramor clapped him on the shoulder. Stay close to Imjar. We hunt for others like yourself, souls lost in this cursed mist. As they resumed their formation, now with Bjarni safely in their midst, a distant roar shattered the unnatural silence. It was a sound like no earthly beast could produce. A blend of thunder, grinding stone, and the howl of a cosmic wind, all given voice through the throat of a creature both physical and metaphysical. Every warrior tensed, weapons raising instinctively toward the sound. Even Ysgramor, who had faced countless foes in life and stood unthreatened in death for thousands of years, felt a primordial shiver run through his soul. Alduin, Valdemar whispered, his naturally powerful voice for once seeming small in the face of that terrible roar. He hunts, Ysgramor agreed grimly, and he has found prey. Another roar followed, closer now, accompanied by a desperate cry that was unmistakably human. Somewhere in the mist ahead, a soul faced the World Eater alone. To me, Ysgramor commanded, breaking into a run toward the sounds of distress. Formation Delta, tongues to the fore. His warband responded instantly, rearranging themselves as they charged through the swirling fog. Those skilled in the thumb moved to the front, preparing to use the voice as both weapon and shield. Archers spread to the flanks, arrows knocked. Warriors with shields formed a mobile wall around Bjarni and the other noncombatants. The mist parted before them, whether from their headlong rush or from Shor's blessing, none could say. Suddenly they emerged into a relatively clear pocket in the fog, a small valley between ethereal hills, illuminated by the strange, sourceless light of Sovngarde. In the center of this clearing, a massive black shape descended from above, Alduin, the World Eater, his scales darker than the void between stars, his eyes burning with malevolent fire. His wings, vast beyond mortal comprehension, created gusts that momentarily dispersed the surrounding mist as they beat with slow, terrible purpose. Beneath him, a lone figure stood defiant, a woman in the armor of an imperial legate, her spectral sword raised futilely against the approaching doom. Her face showed fear but also the determination of one accustomed to facing death. She had died with courage. She would face final oblivion the same way. Zo Alduin, Zok Sarat Dunanko Lane. The dragon's voice shook the very fabric of Sovngarde as he hovered above his intended prey. I am Alduin, most mighty in all of creation. Your soul will strengthen me for the final battle to come. The legate stood her ground, though her spectral form trembled. Then come and take it, worm. Mara may have called me to her realm, but it seems I have one last duty to the Empire, to make you work for your meal. Alduin's maw opened, revealing teeth like ebon daggers, his throat beginning to glow with gathering power. Defiance changes nothing, Jor. Your courage merely adds savor to my feast. Fuss Aroda. The shout came not from Alduin but from Valdemar Strongvoice, who had stepped forward from Ysgramor's warband. The full force of his thumb, a power so great it had been a burden in life, struck Alduin's hovering form like a physical blow, causing the massive dragon to falter momentarily in his descent. Ysgramor seized the opportunity, charging forward with Wuthred raised high. WLD na KEST. The whirlwind sprint shout carried him across the clearing in an instant, placing him between the recovered Alduin and the astonished legate. Back to the hall, shields around the legate. He roared to his warband who had fanned out behind him. Tongues, cover our retreat. Alduin's burning gaze fixed on the newcomer, recognition flickering in those ancient eyes. Ysgramor asterisk, he rumbled, the name somehow both acknowledgement and curse in his draconic voice. Shield-Thane of the soul-gatherer Shor, you interfere in matters beyond even your legendary might. Perhaps, Ysgramor replied, adjusting his grip on Wuthred as his warriors maneuvered to surround and protect the legate. But it seems interference is all we need. Your meal has just walked off the plate, World Eater. Alduin's massive head swung toward the retreating warband, then back to Ysgramor. Calculation replaced rage in those burning eyes. You delay the inevitable. This realm belongs to me by right of conquest, and all souls within it are mine to consume. Strange, Ysgramor said, beginning to back away while keeping Wuthred pointed toward the hovering dragon. I was told this realm belongs to Shor. Perhaps you're confused about your geography, lizard. The insult, deliberately chosen to provoke draconic pride, had its intended effect. Alduin's maw opened wide, that ominous glow building once more in his throat. Yoltor Shul. The fire that erupted was unlike any mortal flame, not merely heat and light, but something more fundamental, as if a star had been condensed into a stream of pure destruction. It engulfed Ysgramor completely, so bright that his warband, now retreating with the rescued legate, had to shield their eyes. When the flames subsided, Ysgramor still stood, his spectral form scorched but intact. Shor's blessing had protected him from annihilation, though the experience had clearly been far from pleasant. Is that all? He taunted, though his voice was rough with pain. The legend spoke of the mighty World Eater, not a flying campfire. Alduin's eyes narrowed to burning slits. Palak Jor, your arrogance exceeds even that of the asterisk Dav asterisk. You cannot destroy me, cannot drive me from this realm. You merely postpone the feast. Then we will continue postponing it, Ysgramor replied, now backing away more rapidly as his warband gained distance with the rescued soul. Soul by soul, day by day, until the Dragonborn comes to end your tyranny once and for all. Alduin's answering roar shook the ethereal landscape, causing ripples in the mist that surrounded the momentary clearing. Asterisk hin ka fen kas benar, your pride will be humbled before the end. No mortal, Dragonborn or otherwise, can stand against me. With a powerful beat of his wings, Alduin rose higher, circling above them like a storm cloud promising devastation. Run back to your hall, Shield-Thane. Gather your trembling souls behind its walls. When I have feasted enough on those who wander outside, I will come for you there. And not even Shor's blessing will save you then. Another wing beat, and Alduin soared away, disappearing into the mist that quickly closed in around the momentary clearing, returning the landscape to its obscured state. Ysgramor stood motionless for a moment, allowing the pain of Alduin's fire to subside. As a soul in SOVNGARD, he could not be permanently destroyed except by being devoured completely, but he could certainly suffer. And suffer he had. The World Eater's fire had reached beyond his spectral form to scorch his very essence. Valdemar approached cautiously, his normally booming voice gentle with concern. Harbinger, we should rejoin the others. The legate is safe, and they await your command. Ysgramor nodded, lowering Wuthred at last. You're right, and we still have souls to find before returning to the hall. He managed a grim smile. Besides, I've had worse burns from spilled mead. They rejoined the main group, where the rescued legate was being integrated into their protection formation. She saluted Ysgramor formally as he approached. Legate Victoria Arentino, 8th Legion, she introduced herself. I owe you my soul, Harbinger. You owe me nothing, Ysgramor replied, returning the salute out of respect for her discipline. All who die with honor deserve to reach the Hall of Valor. We merely ensure what is rightfully yours. Nevertheless, I am in your debt. She glanced back in the direction Alduin had disappeared. I've faced dragons before in life. We've had troubles with them returning all across Skyrim these past months. But that one, he was something else entirely. The firstborn of Akatosh, Ysgramor explained. The end of days given flesh and wings. No ordinary dragon indeed. The legate's expression grew troubled. If he's here in the afterlife hunting souls, and dragons have returned to the world of the living, what does it mean? It means the prophecies are unfolding, Mjar Longstride said gravely. The end times approach, both for the living and the dead. But not if the Dragonborn succeeds, Ysgramor added firmly. According to Shor, this Dragonborn will come even here to SOVNGARD, to face Alduin in final battle. The Dragonborn, Victoria repeated, hope kindling in her eyes. Yes, I've heard tales. A Nord woman, they say, discovered her power when she absorbed a dragon's soul after it was slain at Whiterun. The Greybeards summoned her. This news rippled through the warband. The prophecies were specific. Only a true Dragonborn could permanently defeat Alduin. If one had indeed revealed themselves in the mortal world, there was genuine hope. All the more reason to continue our mission, Ysgramor declared. We must rescue as many souls as possible, deny Alduin the strength he seeks to consume, and prepare SOVNGARD for the Dragonborn's arrival. He raised Wuthred high. Spread out again. Listen for calls of distress. The mist plays tricks with sound as well as sight, so stay alert. They resumed their search pattern, now with 2 rescued souls in their protection. The mist seemed to thicken around them, as if responding to their defiance of its master. Visibility reduced to mere feet in some places, forcing the warriors to maintain verbal contact to avoid becoming separated. Time passed strangely in SOVNGARD, even under normal circumstances. In the mist, it became nearly impossible to track. They might have searched for hours or days as they recovered more lost souls. A grizzled Stormcloak veteran who had fallen at Corvinjund, a young companion who had died fighting trolls near Ysgramor River, an elderly battle mage who had perished defending the College of Winterhold against strange magical anomalies. Each brought news from the world of the living, pieces of a troubling puzzle. Dragons returning across Skyrim, civil war between the Empire and the Stormcloaks, strange happenings at the College of Winterhold, and through it all, rumors of the Dragonborn moving across the land, learning the voice from the Greybeards, interfering in the civil war, investigating ancient ruins. The pieces align, Ysgramor mused as they gathered their rescued souls, now numbering nearly a dozen, in preparation for the return journey to the Hall of Valor. Alduin's return has set many wheels in motion, both in the mortal realm and here. A distant roar reminded them that the World Eater still hunted through the mist. Whether he had found other souls to devour, they could not know, but his continued presence suggested he had not yet abandoned his grim harvest. We should return to the hall, Mjar suggested, glancing nervously toward the sound. These souls are weary, and we've ventured far from safety. Ysgramor nodded agreement. Form up, tightest protection formation. Valdemar, you have point. Your thumb will clear a path if needed. I'll take rear guard. The rescued souls were placed at the center of the formation. surrounded by warriors with shields interlocked. Archers and mages took positions where they could fire over the shield wall if necessary. Ysgramor, still bearing the scorch marks of Alduin's fire across his spectral form, stood at the rear, Wuthred ready to meet any pursuit. They began the journey back toward the Hall of Valor, using Shor's blessing as a compass through the disorienting mist. Each warrior focused intently on their assigned task, senses straining for any sign of draconic approach. The mist seemed to resist their progress, thickening and swirling confusingly around them. Paths that should have led directly to the hall instead curved unpredictably or ended in ethereal cliffs that hadn't been there during their outward journey. It was as if Sovngarde itself was being distorted by Alduin's presence, the realm's geography bending under the influence of the World Eater. "This isn't natural," Victoria observed as they backtracked from yet another unexpected obstacle. "Even for an afterlife, Alduin's power grows," Ysgramor agreed grimly. "Each soul he devours strengthens him and increases his influence over this realm. He may not be able to enter the Hall of Valor directly, but he's making it increasingly difficult for souls to reach it." A sudden shadow passed overhead, momentarily darkening the mist above them. All eyes turned upward, weapons raising in anticipation of attack. But the shadow passed without descending, the beating of massive wings fading into the distance. "He's toying with us," growled Valdemar, his whisper nonetheless carrying to every member of the group. "He knows we're here but chooses not to attack." "Because he's patient," Ysgramor replied. "Why risk confronting armed, prepared warriors when there are isolated, confused souls to be had elsewhere? He'll wait for us to make a mistake, to become separated, to lower our guard. Then we don't give him that satisfaction," Mjar said firmly. "We maintain formation, stay vigilant, and reach the hall no matter how he twists the paths." They pressed on, adapting to the changing landscape, sometimes forced to double back and try different routes when the way forward became impassable. Throughout it all, Shor's blessing guided them, a subtle pull toward the Hall of Valor that persisted despite Alduin's interference. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of careful navigation, the mist thinned slightly, and a massive structure loomed ahead, the whalebone bridge that spanned the ravine before the Hall of Valor. Standing guard at its near end was a colossal figure in ancient Nordic armor, wielding an axe that made even Wuthred seem modest by comparison. "Soon," Ysgramor called in greeting, raising his own weapon in salute. The guardian of the bridge, Soon, Shield-Thane of Shor in life and test-giver in death, returned the salute with his massive axe. "Ysgramor Bloodfire, you return with the lost." "Those we could find," Ysgramor confirmed grimly. "But many more wander in the mist, and some have already fallen to the World Eater." Soon's ancient face showed no surprise. As guardian of the bridge, he was well aware of Alduin's predations. "These souls you bring, they have proven worthy in life, but tradition demands they be tested before entering the hall." Victoria and the other rescued souls looked alarmed at this, but Ysgramor raised a reassuring hand. "Under normal circumstances, yes. Each soul must face you in honorable combat to prove their final worthiness. But surely in these dark times, with Alduin hunting beyond the bridge, exceptions can be made." Soon considered this, his timeless gaze sweeping over the battered and weary group. Finally he nodded, stepping aside from his customary position blocking the bridge. "Shor has spoken of this. In the shadow of the World Eater's wings, the path to the hall shall be open to all who die with valor in their hearts. These souls may pass without challenge, for now." Relief visibly swept through the rescued souls. Victoria, ever the disciplined soldier, snapped to attention and saluted the bridge guardian formally. "Thank you, great Soon." Soon acknowledged her salute with the barest inclination of his massive head, then turned back to Ysgramor. The hall prepares for siege. Feldir and the Tongues have raised ancient wards along the walls. Olaf organizes the defense within. Shor himself has strengthened the foundations against draconic assault. Then we add our strength to theirs, Ysgramor replied. And tomorrow we venture out again to find more lost souls before Alduin claims them. Tomorrow, Tsune agreed, his tone implying that the concept held little meaning in a realm where time itself flowed differently. Go now, rest and restore yourselves. The battles to come will test even your legendary prowess, Shield-Thane. Ysgramor led his warband and their rescued charges across the whalebone bridge, its ancient structure gleaming unnaturally white against the darkened sky of Sovngarde. Behind them, Tsune resumed his vigilant stance, axe at the ready, eternally prepared to test the worthy or repel the unworthy. As they neared the far side of the bridge, the massive doors of the Hall of Valor swung open, spilling golden light across the pathway. Figures stood silhouetted in the doorway, Olaf One-Eye and several warriors of his defensive force, weapons ready in case the approaching group brought danger with them. "Stand down," Ysgramor called ahead. "We bring only friends and worthy souls." Olaf lowered his weapon, relief evident even at a distance. "Praise Shor, we feared the worst when you didn't return after so long." "How long have we been gone?" Imjar asked as they reached the doors. 3 days by our reckoning," Olaf replied, surprising them all. What had felt like hours in the mist had been days to those in the hall. "Feldir feared you had been caught by the World Eater." "Nearly so," Ysgramor admitted as they passed inside, the warmth and light of the hall embracing them after the cold uncertainty of the mist. Alduin grows stronger and bolder. The mist thickens and the paths twist unnaturally. Each journey will be harder than the last. The rescued souls gazed around in wonder as they entered the Hall of Valor. Despite the preparations for defense, it remained magnificent. Long tables laden with feasts, fires blazing in great hearths, the air filled with the mingled scents of mead, roasted meat, and hearty bread. Warriors who had died with glory centuries or millennia apart mingled freely, sharing tales of valor and testing their skills in friendly contests of strength and cunning. "Welcome to Shor's Hall," Ysgramor announced to the new arrivals. "Here you will feast and fight, sing and celebrate until the end of days, or until you choose a different path of service in Sovngarde." Victoria and the other rescued souls were quickly welcomed by the inhabitants of the hall, drawn into conversations, offered overflowing drinking horns, shown to seats of honor at the feasting tables. Despite the threat that loomed outside, the Hall of Valor maintained its essential character as a place of celebration and reward for those who had earned it. Ysgramor, however, had no time for feasting. He sought out Feldir, finding the ancient mage near one of the hall's tall windows, peering out into the mist-shrouded landscape beyond. "It spreads," Feldir said without turning, aware of Ysgramor's approach. "The mist. When you left, we could still see the mountains clearly. Now they're mere shadows, and the valleys are completely obscured." "Alduin's doing," Ysgramor confirmed, joining him at the window. "He uses it to confuse and trap souls before they can reach the hall. And to blind us," Feldir added grimly. "We cannot see him approach until he's nearly upon us. If he chooses to attack the hall directly, can he do that? I thought Shor's power protected this place." "Protected, yes, but not invulnerable." Feldir turned to face him fully, his ancient features grave. "Alduin is no ordinary adversary, Ysgramor. He is to dragons what dragons are to men, an order of magnitude more powerful, more fundamental to the fabric of creation. The World Eater is both literal and figurative. He consumes not just flesh or soul, but concepts themselves." "Then why hasn't he simply devoured Sovngarde already?" Ysgramor demanded. "Why this slow hunt through the mist?" because he is bound by certain laws, even he cannot break. The prophecy constrains him, channels his actions along predestined paths. Feldir's eyes took on a distant look, as if seeing through time itself. And he is not yet at full strength. Each soul he devours brings him closer to his ultimate power, but he is still recovering from his long banishment through time. Ysgramor absorbed this, turning back to gaze out at the obscured landscape. Then we continue as planned. Rescue as many souls as possible. Deny him the strength he seeks. Prepare for the Dragonborn's arrival. Yes, Feldir hesitated, then added, but I fear our margins grow thin. The new souls you brought speak of increasing dragon attacks across Skyrim, of civil war weakening the land when it should be uniting against the greater threat. And the Dragonborn, while acknowledged by the Greybeards, is still learning her power, still growing into her role. She will come, Ysgramor said with certainty that surprised even himself. Prophecy demands it. Prophecy also demands the end of the world, Feldir reminded him quietly. Not all prophecies lead to outcomes we would desire. Their somber exchange was interrupted by the approach of Olaf One-Eye, who brought news from the hall's preparations. The defenses are in place, the former High King reported. Every entrance warded and guarded, every warrior assigned a post. If Alduin attacks directly, he'll find no easy prey here. Good, Ysgramor nodded approval. And my warband, are they rested? Fed and drinking heartily, Olaf confirmed with a hint of a smile. They've earned it, but they'll be ready when you call, never fear. I'll need them at dawn, or whatever passes for it in this mist. We go out again, searching for more souls. Olaf's single eye narrowed. Is that wise? You barely returned from the last expedition. The mist grows thicker and Alduin stronger. All the more reason to deny him further souls, Ysgramor countered. Every warrior we bring to safety is both a victory for us and a defeat for him. Before Olaf could argue further, a disturbance near the main doors drew their attention. Warriors were gathering, voices raised in alarm. The three leaders hurried over to find Tsun himself standing just inside the entrance, something unprecedented, as the bridge guardian never left his post. What brings you from the bridge, Shield-Thane of Shor? Ysgramor asked, concerned by this breach of eternal protocol. Tsun's expression was grim, his massive hands still gripping his giant axe. A warning. The World Eater circles ever closer to the hall. He tests the boundaries, probes the defenses. And he is not alone. This last statement sent a ripple of disquiet through the gathered warriors. Not alone, Feldir pressed. What do you mean? Alduin has summoned lesser dragons to Sovngard, souls of dragons slain in the mortal realm, but not devoured by the Dragonborn. They join him in the hunt, multiplying his reach, extending his influence. The implications were staggering. One Alduin was threat enough. A force of dragons under his command could overwhelm even their enhanced defenses. How many? Olaf demanded. 3 that I have seen, Tsun replied. Smaller than their master, but mighty nonetheless. They patrol the outer reaches of the mist, where it borders the mountains of Sovngarde. Ysgramor exchanged troubled glances with his fellow leaders. This development changed their calculations significantly. Rescue missions into the mist would be far more dangerous with multiple dragons hunting, and the hall itself might face simultaneous attacks from different directions. We must inform Shor, Feldir said decisively. If Alduin brings war to Sovngarde, we need the full might of our lord behind us. Agreed, Ysgramor nodded. But we do not abandon those still lost in the mist. We adjust our strategy, strengthen our warband, perhaps send multiple smaller groups instead of one large one. I return to my post, Tsun announced, already turning back toward the doors. The bridge must be guarded, doubly so now. Be vigilant, warriors of the hall. The time of testing approaches for us all. As Tsune departed, returning to his eternal vigil at the whalebone bridge, a heavy silence fell over the gathered heroes. For many this was unprecedented, conflict coming to Sovngarde itself, the realm of eternal reward becoming a battlefield. They had earned their rest, their celebration, their peace. Yet now they faced the prospect of fighting once more, not in glorious mortal combat but in desperate defense against the end of days. Ysgramor looked around at their troubled faces and felt a responsibility heavier than any he had carried in life. These were the greatest warriors of Nordic history, proven in battle, worthy of Sovngarde's rewards. But they had never faced anything like Alduin and his draconic servants. This was not a fight against elves or trolls or rival tribes. This was a confrontation with Apocalypse itself. He raised Wuthred high, drawing all eyes to him. Hear me, heroes of Sovngarde. Yes, darkness gathers beyond our walls. Yes, the World Eater hunts our kin in the mist. Yes, we face challenges unprecedented even in our storied afterlives. His voice strengthened, carrying to every corner of the vast hall. But we are Nords. Death could not break us. Why should we fear what comes after? We earned our place in this hall through courage, through strength, through unflinching resolve in the face of impossible odds. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, backs straightening, hands moving to weapon hilts. Alduin thinks to feast on our souls, to consume our very essence to fuel his return to the world of the living. I say let him try. Let him break his teeth on Nordic steel and Nordic spirit. Shouts of approval now, drinking horns raised in salute. Prepare yourselves, my friends. Sharpen your blades, check your armor, remember the battle songs of old. We fight not just for ourselves now, but for all who have come before and all who will come after. We fight for Sovngarde itself. The hall erupted in cheers, warriors pounding tables with fists or weapon hilts, voices raised in unanimous approval. Fear had been replaced by determination, uncertainty by resolve. These were the heroes of Nordic legend, and they would not go quietly into oblivion. As the cheering continued, Ysgramor turned to Feldir and Olaf, his voice lowering so only they could hear. We need to speak with Shor immediately. If Alduin has brought dragons to Sovngarde, we need to know exactly what we're facing and what weapons we have at our disposal. Feldir nodded agreement. The inner sanctum. Shor can be communed with there, if he chooses to manifest. Then let's not waste time, Olaf urged. The longer we delay, the stronger our enemy grows. The three leaders slipped away from the main hall, leaving the warriors to their preparations, their boasts, their renewed sense of purpose. They followed a narrow corridor that led deeper into the structure, beyond the feasting halls and celebration chambers, into areas rarely visited even by those who had dwelled in Sovngarde for millennia. The passage opened into a small, circular room with a ceiling that seemed to open directly onto the starry sky of Sovngarde, despite the hall's solid roof visible from outside. In the center of the room stood a simple stone basin filled with water so still it appeared solid. No decorations adorned the walls, no furniture occupied the space. This was the inner sanctum, where Shor could be addressed directly by those with the authority to do so. Feldir approached the basin, motioning for Ysgramor and Olaf to join him. We must join hands and focus our thoughts on Shor. If he deems our need sufficient, he will answer. They formed a circle around the basin, clasping forearms in the warrior's grip rather than merely holding hands. Feldir began to chant in an ancient form of the Nordic tongue, one that predated even Ysgramor's time. The words were not spellcraft as mortals understood it, but something older, more fundamental, a direct address to the divine essence that permeated Sovngarde. As the chant continued, the water in the basin began to move, swirling slowly at first, then faster, forming a small whirlpool. Within that vortex, light gathered, coalescing into a miniature galaxy of stars that spun in patterns both beautiful and impossible to comprehend fully. Shor, Lord of Sovngarde, Shield Father of Nordic kind, Feldir intoned formally. We seek your guidance in this time of darkness. The swirling lights pulsed once, twice, then expanded upward from the basin, forming a column that reached toward the starry ceiling. Within that column, a figure began to take shape. The hooded form they had seen earlier in the hall, but now more defined, more present, though still not fully corporeal. My Shield-Thanes, Shor's voice resonated around them, within them. You bring troubling news from beyond these walls. Alduin has summoned dragons to aid his hunt, Ysgramor reported directly. Soon has seen 3 already, patrolling the outer mists. The hooded figure nodded slowly. The World Eater grows bolder, more confident in his power. Each soul consumed strengthens him, and now he extends his reach through lesser dragons bound to his will. Can we defeat them? Olaf asked bluntly. Not Alduin himself. That task awaits the Dragonborn, but these lesser dragons that serve him. Can they be destroyed or at least driven from Sovngarde? They can be fought, Shor replied carefully. Their souls are already severed from their mortal forms, existing here in Sovngarde only through Alduin's power. They cannot be truly destroyed, but they can be dispersed, forced back to a formless state for a time. How? Ysgramor pressed. What weapons can harm such creatures? The same that would harm them in the mortal realm, steel and spell, courage and cunning. But more effective still is the voice. The thumb can disrupt the very essence that binds their souls to the forms Alduin has granted them. Feldir absorbed this with visible relief. Then we have hope. Many among us are skilled in the voice, not with the Dragonborn's innate power, but with the mastery that comes from decades of study and practice. Hope, yes, Shor agreed, but understand this well. Every battle fought, even every victory won, is merely delay. Without the Dragonborn, Alduin cannot be truly defeated, merely temporarily set back. In the Dragonborn, Ysgramor asked. The souls we rescued spoke of one acknowledged by the Greybeards, but still learning, still growing into her power. Will she come in time? Shor's hooded face turned toward him, those cosmic depths momentarily visible within the shadow. She will come. The Elder Scrolls have foretold it, but when and in what state of readiness? That remains veiled even from divine sight. Then we must hold until she arrives, Olaf declared firmly. Defend the hall, rescue those we can, deny Alduin the strength he seeks. Yes. Shor's form seemed to solidify slightly, becoming more defined within the column of light. And I will grant you additional aid in this task. He raised his arms and the light from the basin intensified, spreading outward to envelop the 3 leaders. It was warm but not burning, powerful but not painful, divine energy channeled with precision and purpose. To you, Ysgramor Shield-Thane, I grant the breath of Kine, enhanced power in the thumb, that you may face the dragons on more equal terms. Your voice will carry Kine's fury, shaking the very foundations of those who would threaten her children. Ysgramor felt the blessing settle into his soul, a resonance that vibrated through his entire being. His voice, already strong from years of practice in life, now carried a deeper power, a fundamental connection to the primal forces of creation. To you, Feldir the Old, I grant the sight beyond, the ability to pierce Alduin's mist, to see true paths where others find only confusion. You will guide your fellow warriors through the deceptions the World Eater has laid, finding those lost souls before they fall to his hunger. Feldir bowed deeply as the blessing took hold, his ancient eyes suddenly alight with new perception, seeing layers and dimensions previously hidden even in the afterlife. And to you, Olaf One-Eye, I grant the Shield of Stune, enhanced protection for the hall and all who dwell within it. While you stand guard, the defenses will be strengthened tenfold against draconic assault." Olaf thumped his fist against his chest in salute, feeling the divine energy settle into a steady pulse that extended beyond his individual form to connect with the very walls of the Hall of Valor. "These gifts are not without cost," Shor warned. "They draw upon my own essence, already strained by Alduin's growing influence in this realm. Use them wisely, conserve them when possible, for they are finite resources in an infinite struggle." The three leaders bowed in acknowledgement of both the gifts and the warning. As they straightened, Shor's form began to fade, the column of light receding back into the basin. "One last counsel I give you," the god's voice continued, growing fainter. "Prepare for the unexpected. Alduin's return has set in motion events beyond even divine foresight. The barriers between worlds grow thin in places, permeable. What was once separate may soon converge." Before they could question this cryptic warning, Shor had vanished completely, the water in the basin returning to its perfect stillness, reflecting only the starry ceiling above. For a moment the three stood in silence, absorbing both the divine gifts they had received and the troubling implications of Shor's final words. "The barriers between worlds grow thin," Feldir repeated thoughtfully. "He speaks not just of Nirn and SOVNGARD, but of other planes as well. The disruption caused by Alduin's return may be more far-reaching than we imagined." "A problem for another day," Olaf said pragmatically. "Right now, we have dragons hunting our kinsmen in the mist and the hall to defend." Ysgramor nodded agreement. "Olaf is right. We focus on the immediate threat. Feldir, with your new sight, can you determine the best paths through the mist for tomorrow's rescue mission?" The ancient mage closed his eyes briefly, his face taking on a distant expression as he exercised his newly granted perception. "Yes, I can see them now. Threads of light where the mist thins, paths that circle around the areas where dragons patrol." And he paused, eyes opening wide. "Souls. I can sense them now, clusters of the worthy dead gathered in places of temporary safety, afraid to move for fear of Alduin's notice." "How many?" Ysgramor asked urgently. "Dozens at least, perhaps hundreds, not all in one place but scattered throughout the mist in groups of varying size." This news both heartened and troubled the Shield-Thane. So many souls still survived, not yet claimed by the World Eater. But their rescue would require multiple expeditions, each facing the increased danger of dragon patrols. "We'll need to split our forces," he decided. 3 warbands, each led by one of us, taking different paths through the mist. Feldir guides us with his sight. I confront any dragons we cannot avoid with the enhanced thumb, and Olaf ensures the hall remains impregnable in our absence." "A sound strategy," Olaf agreed, "but we should wait until Alduin's hunting patterns become clear. Tsune has only recently spotted these new dragons. Let us observe from the walls for a day, understand their movements, then plan our rescue accordingly." Ysgramor wanted to object. Every hour they delayed meant more souls potentially lost to Alduin's hunger. But Olaf's counsel was wise. Rushing blindly into increased danger would help no one. "One day," he conceded. "We watch and plan for one day. Then we move, regardless of what we've learned." With this agreement reached, they left the inner sanctum, returning to the main hall where preparations for defense continued in earnest. Warriors tested weapons, tongues practiced shouts, mages prepared protective wards, all under Olaf's experienced direction. As night descended fully over SOVNGARD, a deeper darkness now, with the mist absorbing what little light the stars and ethereal aurora provided, Ysgramor found himself standing alone on one of the hall's balconies, gazing out into the obscured landscape. Somewhere out there, lost souls wandered in confusion and fear. Somewhere out there, Alduin and his draconic servants hunted, And somewhere beyond Sovngarde entirely, a Dragonborn walked the path toward her destiny, a destiny that would determine the fate of all worlds, seen and unseen. "We will hold until you arrive," Ysgramor whispered to that unknown hero across the gulf between realms. "We will give you the time you need. Do not fail us, Dragonborn. Do not fail us all." As if in answer to his whispered plea, a distant roar shattered the unnatural silence of the mist-shrouded night. Alduin's challenge to all who would defy him, his promise of inevitable victory, his hunger that would never be fully satisfied until all creation had been consumed and remade in his image. Ysgramor's hand tightened on Wuthred's haft as he turned back toward the Hall of Valor. Tomorrow would bring planning, observation, strategy. The day after would bring battle, rescue, confrontation with the dragons that served the World Eater. And beyond that, only the gods knew. Perhaps not even them, in these uncertain times when prophecy itself unfolded in unexpected ways. The first harbinger of the companions, greatest hero of Nordic history, now Shield-Thane of Sovngarde by Shor's decree, returned to the warmth and light of the hall, leaving the deepening darkness of the misty night behind. For now, at least, there was preparation to oversee, warriors to counsel, hope to maintain. Sovngarde's final battle approached, and Ysgramor would ensure they met it with the courage and honor that had defined Nordic valor since the first days of creation. Chapter 2: Dragon Hunt. Dawn came to Sovngarde not as a brightening of the sky, but as a subtle lightening of the mist, darkness giving way to a diffuse gray glow that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. Atop the highest tower of the Hall of Valor, Ysgramor stood with Feldir and Olaf, surveying the shrouded landscape through eyes enhanced by Shor's blessing. "There," Feldir pointed toward a distant peak barely visible through breaks in the fog. "The Bronze One perches on Twilight Mountain. He has been there since midnight, watching the approach from the east." Olaf narrowed his single eye, focusing in the direction indicated. "I see nothing but shadows and mist. The sight beyond reveals what is hidden," Feldir explained. "Shor's gift allows me to pierce Alduin's deceptions. The dragon is massive, though not nearly as large as the World Eater himself. Bronze scales, curved horns. And he is not alone. Souls are trapped on the lower slopes, Nordic warriors who died with honor but now wander confused in the mist." Ysgramor adjusted his grip on Wuthred, calculations running through his mind. How many souls? A dozen, perhaps more. They cluster together for protection, sensing the dragon above though they cannot see him clearly. And the other dragons? Feldir turned slowly, his enhanced vision scanning the mist-shrouded realm. One circles the far valleys near the edge of forever, where Sovngarde borders the void. Emerald scales, tattered wings. He appears to be herding souls rather than hunting them directly. Driving them toward Alduin, Olaf suggested grimly. "Most likely," Feldir continued his survey. "The third," he paused, frowning. "The third is closer, much closer. Crimson scales like fresh blood, smaller than the others but moving with greater purpose. He follows the path of the river that flows beneath the whalebone bridge." "Approaching the hall directly?" Ysgramor asked sharply. "Not yet. He seems to be patrolling, establishing a perimeter, preventing souls from reaching the bridge." Olaf grunted in understanding. "A blockade, clever strategy. The other two herd souls into collection points while this one ensures none escape to the hall." "And Alduin himself?" Ysgramor pressed, eyes still straining to see what Feldir observed so clearly. The ancient mage's expression darkened. "Hidden from even the sight beyond. Whether by his own power or some limitation of Shor's blessing, I cannot say. But his presence looms over all of Sovngarde like a storm about to break." For several moments, the three leaders stood in silence, absorbing both the tactical situation and its dire implications. Alduin's strategy was becoming clear, a methodical harvest of souls to fuel his power before confronting the Dragonborn. If left unchecked, he would grow stronger with each passing day, potentially beyond even prophesied limits. "We move today," Ysgramor decided, breaking the contemplative silence. "3 warbands as planned. Feldir, you will lead the eastern group to Twilight Mountain, using your sight to avoid the bronze dragon while rescuing the souls trapped there." Feldir nodded acceptance of the assignment. "I'll take Jar as my second. Her scouting skills complement my vision." "Good," Ysgramor turned to Olaf. "You will lead the western band toward the edge of forever. Your task will be the most challenging, rescuing souls while they're being actively herded by the Emerald Dragon." "A challenge worthy of the High King of Skyrim," Olaf replied with grim confidence. "I'll take Valdemar. His thumb will be useful if we must confront the beast directly." "Agreed." Ysgramor turned to face the northern approach, where the Crimson Dragon patrolled the river path. "I will lead the third band directly north, to break the blockade and clear the way to the Whalebone Bridge. Any souls that escape the other dragons must have a clear path to the hall." "That puts you in direct confrontation with the Red Dragon," Olaf pointed out. "Even with Shor's blessing enhancing your thumb, that's no small task." "Which is why I'll take a larger force," Ysgramor replied. 20 warriors for my band, 15 each for yours and Feldir's. We leave simultaneously, creating 3 targets for Alduin's attention, 3 disruptions to his carefully laid plans. "And if Alduin himself appears?" Feldir asked soberly. Ysgramor's expression hardened. "Then we retreat immediately. We cannot defeat the World Eater, only delay him, frustrate him, deny him the souls he seeks to devour. That victory awaits the Dragonborn alone." With the strategy settled, they descended from the tower to the main hall, where warriors had already begun gathering in preparation for the day's missions. Word had spread quickly through the Hall of Valor, the greatest heroes of Nordic history volunteering eagerly for the dangerous task ahead. They separated to organize their respective warbands. Ysgramor selected his 20 carefully, a mix of ancient warriors from his own time and heroes from later eras, balancing strength, speed, and skill with the voice. Among them was Victoria, the imperial legate they had rescued 2 days prior, whose tactical experience with the modern legion would be valuable. "Are you certain you wish to join this mission?" Ysgramor asked her as they gathered near the hall's main doors. "You've only just reached the hall after a warrior's death. None would think less of you for remaining in safety." Victoria straightened, military discipline evident in her bearing. "With respect, Harbinger, I've spent my entire military career protecting others. I won't stop now just because I'm dead." She smiled slightly. "Besides, I've faced dragons before during the recent troubles in Skyrim. I may have insights that warriors from earlier eras lack." Ysgramor nodded approval. "Well said. You'll be 3rd rank, center position. Keep your eyes on the sky and call out any tactical observations." Within the hour, all 3 warbands were assembled and prepared. Feldir's group would depart first, using a lesser-known eastern path that wound through ravines too narrow for a dragon to navigate easily. Olaf's would leave shortly after, taking a more direct western route, but maintaining magical concealment through the efforts of several battle mage members. Ysgramor's band would depart last, moving openly along the main approach to the Whalebone Bridge, intentionally drawing the Crimson Dragon's attention. As Feldir led his warriors out through a side entrance, melting quickly into the mist beyond, Ysgramor addressed his own warband one final time. "We face no ordinary foe today," he reminded them, Wuthred gleaming in the ethereal light of the hall. "These dragons are extensions of Alduin's will, souls of fallen dragons bound to his service. They cannot be truly destroyed, but they can be dispersed, forced back to formless essence for a time. The thumb is our most effective weapon. Aim for wings to ground them, then concentrate fire on their heads. He looked at each warrior in turn, meeting their eyes, acknowledging both their courage and their concerns. Remember our purpose. We fight not for glory today, but for the souls of our kin lost in the mist. Each one rescued is a victory. Each one denied to Alduin weakens the World Eater before his final confrontation with the Dragonborn. With a final salute to Shor's empty throne at the far end of the hall, Ysgramor led his warband through the massive doors and out into the mist-shrouded realm beyond. They formed up in a wedge formation, with Ysgramor at the point and the strongest tongues positioned along the edges where their shouts could reach outward in defense. The main approach to the Hall of Valor was a broad path that led from the great doors to the whalebone bridge spanning the river gorge. Under normal circumstances, it was a majestic sight. The path lined with statues of legendary Nordic heroes. The bridge itself, an architectural wonder crafted from the bones of an ancient leviathan that had once swum the seas of creation. Now shrouded in Alduin's unnatural mist, it held an eerie, threatening quality. The statues loomed like specters through the fog, their features distorted, their poses seeming more menacing than heroic. They moved slowly but steadily, each warrior alert for any sign of draconic presence. Above them, the mist occasionally thinned enough to reveal patches of Sovngarde's unique sky. Neither day nor night as Nirn understood them, but a twilight realm of stars and ethereal auroras visible even in what passed for daylight. As they neared the bridge, a deep, resonant roar shattered the unnatural silence. It came from downstream, where the river disappeared into thicker mist, but the sound carried clearly, a challenge and a warning combined. "He comes," Victoria said quietly, her gaze fixed on the shrouded river. The Crimson One Feldir described. "Form defensive circle," Ysgramor commanded. "Tongues ready. He will approach from the river. They prefer to attack from above or with the sun at their backs." The warband swiftly rearranged into a circular formation, shields interlocked among those who carried them, archers and mages protected in the inner ring, tongues spaced evenly around the perimeter. Ysgramor took position at the northern point, facing directly toward the bridge and the river beyond. A shadow moved within the mist downstream, massive, winged, sinuous. Then another roar, closer now, vibrating through the ethereal ground beneath their feet. The mist rippled as if disturbed by a sudden wind, drawing back like a curtain to reveal their adversary. The crimson dragon rose from the river gorge, water streaming from scales that gleamed like fresh blood even in the diffused light. Smaller than Alduin, but still enormous by any mortal standard, its wingspan easily 100 feet from tip to tip. Its head was adorned with a crown of obsidian-black horns, and its eyes burned with malevolent intelligence, not the world-ending malice of Alduin himself, but the focused hatred of a predator interrupted during its hunt. "Fran hin dinok jor," the dragon's voice boomed across the distance. "Taste your death, mortals. My master Alduin has claimed this realm and all souls within it. Return to your hall and await your inevitable consumption, or face me now and hasten your end." Ysgramor stepped forward from the defensive formation, Wuthred raised in challenge. "We are no mortals, dragon. We are the honored dead, the worthy souls of Sovngarde, and this realm belongs to Shor alone." The dragon's laughter rumbled like an avalanche. Nalat may, silence, fool. Shor is absent, fled before Alduin's might. The soul gatherer abandons his precious Nords to their fate. "A lie," Ysgramor countered firmly. "Shor stands with us, his power flows through us. Leave now, return to the formless void, and we will not be forced to send you there ourselves." The dragon's only answer was a sudden dive. wings folded back, jaws opening to reveal teeth like ebon daggers. From its throat came the telltale glow of gathering power, the prelude to a shout of devastating force. "Scatter!" Ysgramor bellowed, and his warband moved with practiced precision, breaking their circle to evade the concentrated attack while maintaining smaller defensive formations. "Yoltor Shul!" The dragon's fire breath shout erupted forth, a concentrated stream of flame that scorched the path where they had stood moments before. Even in the afterlife, such draconic fire could cause immense pain to spectral forms, potentially dispersing a soul's coherence with sufficient application. As the dragon swooped low over their position, passing just overhead, Ysgramor felt Shor's blessing surge within him. The breath of Kine filled his lungs, empowering his voice beyond even his considerable mortal mastery. "Fusro-da!" His unrelenting force shout struck the dragon's wing with unprecedented power, the shock wave visible as a distortion in the very air. The impact folded the wing painfully backward, disrupting the creature's flight and sending it careening toward the misty ground. The dragon crashed with a thunderous impact that shook the path, leaving a furrow in the ethereal soil as it skidded to a halt near the foot of the whalebone bridge. It roared in both pain and fury, scrambling back to its feet with surprising agility for such a massive being. "Now!" Ysgramor commanded, and his warband converged on the temporarily grounded dragon, attacking from all sides. Archers loosed spectral arrows that found gaps between scales. Battle mages hurled destruction spells that scorched and froze in alternating waves. Warriors with shields formed a mobile wall to absorb the dragon's thrashing tail and snapping jaws, allowing their companions with heavier weapons to strike at vulnerable points. But most devastating were the tongues, who coordinated their shouts with practiced precision. One would stagger the beast with unrelenting force, allowing another to follow with frost breath to slow its movements, then a third with fire breath to exploit the thermal shock against its scales. The dragon fought back ferociously, its voice a weapon that sent warriors flying through the air, its teeth and claws rending spectral armor and drawing essence that flowed like luminous blood. Several of Ysgramor's warband were badly injured, forced to fall back to reform their cohesion as souls. "Davanai Dailan!" The dragon roared as it snapped a spectral spear in half with its jaws, sending the wielder tumbling across the ground. Dragons do not die, not truly, not ever. Ysgramor, seeing an opening as the beast turned to follow the tumbling warrior, charged directly at its exposed neck. Wuuthrad, forged in life with a special hatred for elves but now imbued with Shor's blessing, gleamed with otherworldly power as he swung it in a mighty arc. The blade connected with a sound like a thunderclap, biting deep into the dragon's scales. Not physical flesh as it would have been in Nirn, but spectral essence, the soul stuff that comprised all beings in Sovngarde. The dragon shrieked, a sound of genuine pain and shock, as Wuuthrad carved a glowing wound in its neck. "You are not in Nirn now, lizard," Ysgramor growled, wrenching his axe free and preparing for another strike. "Here, your soul is as vulnerable as any other." The dragon's eyes widened with something approaching fear, an emotion likely foreign to it in life. "Need, this cannot be." Before Ysgramor could land another blow, the dragon gathered its remaining strength and pushed off from the ground with its hind legs, powerful wings beating frantically to gain altitude despite the damage to one side. It rose unsteadily, listing to the left, essence streaming from the wound in its neck. "Zofent Dal asterisk," it snarled down at them. "I will return, and Alduin will know of this abomination you have wrought." With that promise of retribution, it disappeared into the mist, the sound of its labored wing beats fading into the distance. Ysgramor lowered Wuuthrad, breathing heavily not from exertion, but from the effort of channeling such power through the enhanced thumb. The confrontation had been brief but intense, and while they had driven off the dragon, it had not been without cost. Several warriors lay on the ground, their spectral forms wavering with injuries that would have been fatal in the mortal realm. Here they would recover, but not quickly enough to continue the mission. "Victoria," Ysgramor called to the legate, who had fought with distinction, her military training evident in how she had coordinated with warriors millennia her senior. "Take the wounded back to the hall. Soon will allow you passage without challenge if you bear Shor's injured. And the rest of you," she asked, already moving to organize the evacuation. "We continue as planned." The Crimson Dragon was meant to block access to the bridge. With it driven off, souls fleeing the other dragons will have a clear path to the hall. We'll establish a defensive position here and guide any we encounter. As Victoria led the injured warriors back along the path to the Hall of Valor, Ysgramor reorganized his remaining force. 13 warriors still stood ready, including some of the most powerful tongues. They positioned themselves strategically around the approach to the Whalebone Bridge, creating a secure perimeter while maintaining lines of sight through the shifting mist. The dragon spoke of Shor being absent. One of the warriors, Nicula's Iron Fist, a legendary brawler from the early Second Era, said quietly to Ysgramor, "Is there truth to that boast?" "No," Ysgramor replied firmly, though in the privacy of his thoughts he harbored concerns. Shor's manifestations had always been limited in Sovngarde, the god present more in essence than physical form. But since Alduin's arrival, those manifestations had become rarer, briefer. "Shor is with us still. His blessing flows through me, through the hall, through all of Sovngarde. The dragon sought to undermine our resolve with lies, a tactic as old as conflict itself." Nicula seemed satisfied with this answer, turning his attention back to the misty landscape. But the question lingered in Ysgramor's mind. Where was Shor in this time of greatest need? The god had granted them blessings, yes, but his direct intervention seemed conspicuously absent as Alduin's influence spread across the realm. Movement in the mist interrupted his troubled thoughts. Shadowy figures approached from the northwest, moving quickly but erratically as if pursued. "Souls," called H. Sharpeye, their best archer, from her elevated position atop a fallen statue. "A group of 8, maybe 10, running from something. Defensive positions," Ysgramor ordered. "Tongues ready. Could be the Emerald Dragon pursuing escapees from Olaf's area." As the figures drew closer, their features became clearer. Nordic warriors mostly, with a few other races among them. Their spectral forms showed signs of recent battles, wounds that still leaked essence, armor dented and torn. They spotted Ysgramor's group and changed course directly toward them, hope visible even at a distance. "Harbinger," the lead figure called out, a woman in ancient Atmoran armor similar to what Ysgramor's own people had worn thousands of years ago. "Praise Shor, we've found the path." Ysgramor stepped forward to meet them, recognition dawning as they drew closer. "Ysra 3 Winters, can it be you?" The woman grinned through a face streaked with what appeared to be ash and spectral blood. "In the flesh, or whatever passes for it here. We escaped the Emerald Worm with Olaf One-Eye's help. He sent us ahead, while he and his warband distracted the beast." "How many with you?" Ysgramor asked, quickly counting the approaching figures. 9 including myself. We were 12 when we fled, but—" She glanced back at her battered companions. "The dragon caught 3 before Olaf's group intervened." Sorrow twisted Ysgramor's features momentarily. Souls devoured by Alduin or his servants didn't merely die again. They ceased to exist entirely, their essence consumed to fuel the World Eater's power. There would be no third chance for those lost in such a manner. "You're safe now," he assured Ysra and her group. The bridge lies just ahead. Cross it and make for the Hall of Valor. Soon will let you pass without challenge, Shor's decree during this crisis. You're not coming with us, one of the other souls asked, a man in the robes of a college of Winterhold mage, his spectral form showing signs of a fiery death. We maintain position here to ensure the path remains open, and to guide others who might follow. Ysra clasped forearms with Ysgramor in the warrior's grip. Then we'll send help from the hall, more warriors to bolster your position. Good. And tell Olaf's second to expect their return soon. The Emerald Dragon will not be easily deterred. As Ysra's group continued toward the Whalebone Bridge, crossing with reverent steps before breaking into a run toward the distant Hall of Valor, Ysgramor turned his attention westward, where Olaf's warband was presumably still engaged with the second of Alduin's draconic servants. Jordies, he called up to the archer, what do you see to the west? She narrowed her eyes, focusing on the thick mist that shrouded the western approaches. Flashes of light spellfire, I think, and, yes, there. A green shape moving through the clouds. The Emerald Dragon circles above something. Must be Olaf's warband. Distance. Half a league, perhaps less. They appear to be retreating in good order, maintaining a fighting withdrawal toward our position. Ysgramor nodded approval. Olaf was an experienced commander. He wouldn't risk his entire warband in a direct confrontation with a dragon if it could be avoided. Better to rescue what souls they could, then retreat to join forces at a more defensible position. Prepare to provide covering fire when they emerge from the mist, Ysgramor ordered. Tongues to the western edge of our perimeter. If the dragon pursues them into the open, we'll shout together to drive it back. As his warriors repositioned according to his commands, Ysgramor found his thoughts turning to Feldir's group. The ancient mage had led his warband eastward, toward Twilight Mountain where the bronze dragon perched. With his sight beyond, Feldir had the advantage of being able to avoid direct confrontation, potentially rescuing the trapped souls without alerting their draconic jailer. But if anything went wrong, another disturbance in the mist drew his attention, this time from the path leading directly to the bridge, where they had driven off the Crimson Dragon earlier. More figures approached, moving with the disciplined formation of trained soldiers rather than the desperate flight of Ysra's group. Contact front, called one of the perimeter guards. Large group approaching from the north bridgehead. Ysgramor moved to the northern edge of their position, eyes straining to make out details through the shifting fog. Numbers. 20 at least, orderly column 2 abreast. Laid figures appear to be, soon. Sure enough, the massive form of SOVNGARD'S bridge guardian materialized from the mist, his enormous axe resting casually on one shoulder. Behind him came a column of souls, Nordic warriors mostly, but also Redguards, Imperials, even an Orsimer or two, all bearing the marks of honorable deaths in battle. Shield-Thane soon greeted Ysgramor formally as they met at the perimeter. I bring reinforcements from among the newly judged. These arrived at the bridge moments ago, having escaped the World Eater's hunt through their own valor. I have tested them, and found them worthy both of the hall and of joining your defense. Ysgramor saluted the god hero with Wuthred. They are most welcome. We drove off the Crimson Dragon, but it will return, likely with reinforcements of its own. So I witnessed. Tsun's ageless face showed a hint of something like approval. Your enhanced thumb served you well. The dragon fled beyond the Twilight Veil to the outer boundaries where SOVNGARD'S light fades. It will recover eventually, but not quickly. The newly arrived warriors integrated smoothly into Ysgramor's defensive formation, nearly doubling their numbers and significantly increasing their fighting capacity. Among them were several who had died recently enough to have experience fighting the dragons that had reappeared across Skyrim. their knowledge valuable despite their relative youth, compared to the ancient heroes of Ysgramor's original band. Soon, his duty of guiding the new arrivals completed, prepared to return to his eternal post at the bridgehead. Before departing, he drew Ysgramor aside, his voice lowering to a rumble that only the Shield-Thane could hear. "The World Eater grows stronger by the hour," he warned. "Each soul devoured adds to his power. He tests the boundaries of Sovngarde, probing for weaknesses in Shor's domain." "Where is Shor?" Ysgramor asked directly, giving voice to the concern that had troubled him since the Crimson Dragon's taunt. "Why does he not confront Alduin directly?" Tsun's expression remained stoic, but something, concern, perhaps even fear, flickered in his ancient eyes. "It is not my place to speak of the gods' affairs, but know this: Alduin's return was prophesied, as was his confrontation with the Last Dragonborn. The very skein of fate binds these events, restricting the direct intervention of divine beings lest the prophecy be diverted from its destined course. So Shor stands aside while Alduin devours the souls of his faithful." "Not aside," Tsun corrected firmly. "Never that, but his actions must be circumspect, channeled through intermediaries like yourself. The direct confrontation between God and World Eater would unravel the prophecy's tapestry, potentially preventing the Dragonborn's destined role from manifesting." This explanation did little to ease Ysgramor's frustration, but he recognized the constraints of prophecy. The Elder Scrolls had mapped out certain immutable points in the flow of time, nexus events that could not be altered without catastrophic consequences for all creation. "Then we continue as we have begun," he said finally, "rescuing souls, denying Alduin his feast, preparing Sovngarde for the Dragonborn's arrival." "Yes." Tsun clapped a massive hand on Ysgramor's shoulder. "And know that while Shor's direct intervention is constrained, his favor rests upon you and all who stand against the World Eater. The Hall of Valor remains his domain, a bastion that Alduin cannot breach so long as Nordic valor defends it." With that reassurance, qualified though it was, Tsun returned to his post at the bridge, his massive form soon swallowed by the ever-present mist. Ysgramor rejoined his expanded forces, directing the new arrivals to positions that best utilized their skills and experience. They had barely completed this reorganization when Jordy's called out from her elevated position. "Movement from the west. Olaf's band emerges from the mist, and they're moving fast." Sure enough, figures appeared through the swirling fog, running in a disciplined formation that spoke of Olaf's military leadership. The former High King himself brought up the rear, occasionally turning to loose a thumb at pursuers hidden by the mist. "Defensive line facing west," Ysgramor commanded. "Archers and mages ready. Tongues with me at the center point." His expanded force moved with impressive coordination despite having only recently come together, forming a curved line facing the western approach. Olaf's group, seeing the prepared defense, adjusted their course to run directly through the center of the formation, where Ysgramor and the most powerful tongues waited. "Emerald Dragon pursues," Olaf reported breathlessly as he reached them, turning immediately to stand alongside Ysgramor. "More aggressive than we anticipated. It devoured 3 souls before we could intervene, then attacked directly despite our numbers. Casualties: 5 injured being carried by their shield siblings. No dispersals, thanks Shor. We rescued 17 souls from a pen the dragon had created, a valley surrounded by sheer cliffs where it collected its prey." Before Ysgramor could respond, an ear-splitting roar shattered the relative quiet. The mist ahead roiled and parted as a massive form burst through. The Emerald Dragon, its scales gleaming with an iridescent green hue that shifted like the aurora above Sovngarde. Larger than the crimson one they had faced earlier, Its wingspan cast a shadow over their entire formation despite the diffused light. "Nus los di," the dragon thundered. "They are mine. The souls you stole belong to Alduin Thury, and I will reclaim them or feast on you instead." Yoltoor Shul. Olaf's fire breath shout erupted before the dragon could attack, catching it mid-descent. The flames engulfed its head, momentarily blinding it and disrupting its charge. "Now!" Ysgramor roared, and as one the assembled tongues released their thumb. Fuss Aroda. The combined unrelenting force shout struck the dragon like a battering ram, the multiple overlapping shock waves creating a thunderclap that echoed across SOVNGARD. The emerald dragon was hurled backward, its massive form tumbling through the air before crashing into the misty ground with an impact that shook the earth beneath their feet. But unlike the crimson dragon, this one recovered quickly, rolling to its feet with surprising agility for a creature of its size. Its eyes burned with rage and humiliation, jaw working as it prepared another devastating shout. "Scatter!" Ysgramor commanded, and his forces broke apart just as the dragon released its attack. Fokrdin. The frost breath shout swept across the area they had occupied moments before, coating the ground and nearby statues with ethereal ice that glowed with an unnatural blue light. Any soul caught in that blast would have been frozen in place, immobilized and vulnerable to the dragon's physical attacks. The battle that followed was chaotic and visceral, a swirling melee as warriors attacked from all sides while the dragon snapped, clawed, and lashed with its tail. Its shouts sent heroes flying through the air, some returning to the fight immediately, others taking longer to reform their spectral coherence after particularly devastating impacts. Ysgramor and Olaf fought side by side, two of the greatest Nordic heroes in history, coordinating their attacks with the practiced precision of veteran shield brothers. When one would draw the dragon's attention with a frontal assault, the other would strike at its flanks or rear. When one needed to recover from a shout, the other would step forward to maintain pressure on the beast. The emerald dragon fought with increasing desperation as the battle wore on, sensing that this confrontation was not proceeding as Alduin had promised when he bound the draconic soul to his service. These were no ordinary souls to be herded and devoured at leisure. These were the greatest heroes of Nordic history, enhanced by Shor's blessing, coordinated by legendary generals. Alduin, the dragon finally called out, its voice echoing across SOVNGARD. "Zoprog fal kinzan, I need the master." Whether this was a tactical communication or simply a desperate plea for aid, the effect was immediate and terrifying. The mist surrounding the battlefield darkened suddenly, as if a shadow had fallen over all of SOVNGARD. The air grew heavy, difficult to move through, and a deep, resonant rumble built beneath their feet, not coming from any specific direction but from everywhere at once. Ysgramor recognized the signs from their previous encounter. "Alduin comes, retreat to the bridge, move." His warriors needed no further encouragement. They disengaged from the emerald dragon in good order, the rearguard maintaining pressure, while the main force began a fighting withdrawal toward the whalebone bridge. The rescued souls were ushered ahead, guarded by the strongest warriors, while the tongues prepared to cover their retreat. The emerald dragon, sensing their withdrawal, pressed forward with renewed vigor. "Need, you will not escape. My master comes to claim you all." Fuss Aroda. Ysgramor's enhanced thumb struck the dragon directly in the face, sending it reeling backward once more and buying precious seconds for his forces to continue their retreat. The bridge lay just ahead, its pale structure a beacon through the darkening mist. Soon stood ready at its near end, massive axe raised, prepared to defend the crossing if necessary. But before they could reach the safety of the bridge, the darkness coalesced, the mist parting to reveal a form that dwarfed even the emerald dragon. Alduin, the World Eater, descended from above, his ebon scales absorbing what little light remained in the shadowed battlefield. His eyes burned with an intensity that seared the soul, ancient and malevolent beyond mortal comprehension. Ysgramor ***. Alduin's voice resonated at a frequency that vibrated through the very essence of all present, a physical force as much as a sound. Pagas salo jane du Shor, hin kanarik los ni het. Though most present didn't understand the dragon tongue, the meaning was clear enough. A taunt about Shor's absence, a dismissal of their resistance as futile. Ysgramor stood his ground, Wuthred raised, Olaf at his side and his warriors forming a defensive semicircle behind them. The retreating souls and injured had reached the bridge, crossing under Tsun's protection, but the fighting force remained, caught between the Emerald Dragon and Alduin himself. "We stand with Shor, World Eater," Ysgramor declared, his voice steady despite the overwhelming presence before him. "This realm is his, these souls his honored dead. Your hunt ends here." Alduin's laughter shook the very foundations of SOVNGARD, causing ripples in the misty reality around them. "Mayus Mun, foolish man, you speak of ownership while your god hides. SOVNGARD falls to me by right of conquest, as all realms shall in time." The World Eater's massive wings extended to their full span, casting a shadow darker than night over the assembled warriors. His head lowered, jaws parting to reveal teeth that could shred not just flesh but the fabric of reality itself. The telltale glow of an imminent shout built in his throat, a power beyond any they had faced thus far. Ysgramor felt Shor's blessing surge within him, responding to the imminent threat. But even enhanced by divine favor, he knew they couldn't withstand Alduin's full might. This was not their destined confrontation that awaited the Dragonborn alone. "Fall back," he roared to his warriors. "To the bridge, now." As his forces began a disciplined withdrawal, Ysgramor raised Wuthred high, channeling every ounce of Shor's blessing into what would come next. Beside him, Olaf One-Eye drew a deep breath, preparing his own thumb. Alduin's head reared back, the glow intensifying as he prepared to unleash devastation upon them. At the same moment, the Emerald Dragon, recovered from Ysgramor's earlier shout, advanced from the west, intent on cutting off their retreat. "Together," Ysgramor called to Olaf, and in perfect unison they released the full power of their enhanced voices. *Fuss Ro. The combined unrelenting force shout, amplified by Shor's blessing and their own legendary prowess, struck Alduin like a physical blow, not enough to harm the World Eater but sufficient to disrupt his attack and momentarily stagger him. The shock wave continued past him, catching the Emerald Dragon in its periphery and sending it tumbling sideways. In the precious seconds this bought them, Ysgramor's forces completed their retreat to the bridge, where Tsun stood ready, his divine presence creating a boundary that even Alduin would hesitate to cross directly. The World Eater recovered quickly, his burning eyes fixing on Ysgramor with a hatred older than time. "Hind Aunt Doll, you merely delay the inevitable. When the mist covers all of SOVNGARD, when every wandering soul has strengthened me, I will come for your precious hall, and not even Shor's blessing will save you then." "By then the Dragonborn will have come," Ysgramor replied defiantly, "and your doom with her." Alduin's eyes narrowed at the mention of the Dragonborn, a ripple of something, concern, uncertainty, passing through his massive form. "The false Davasil will fall as all others have. None can stand against Alduin, firstborn of Akatosh." With that proclamation, the World Eater turned away, wings beating powerfully as he rose into the darkened sky. The Emerald Dragon, recovered from the edge of the shout's effect, scrambled back to its feet and took flight as well, following its master into the thickening mist. For several long moments, Ysgramor and his warriors stood at the bridgehead, weapons ready, expecting a renewal of the attack from another direction. But gradually, the oppressive darkness lifted slightly, the mist returning to its previous state, thick and disorienting, but not carrying the direct malevolence of Alduin's immediate presence. "He withdraws," Olaf said finally, lowering his war axe. "For now, to lick his wounds and reconsider his strategy." Ysgramor agreed, turning to assess their forces. Despite the chaotic battle and narrow escape, they had suffered remarkably few casualties. A dozen warriors showed injuries of varying severity, but only 3 had been dispersed completely, their spectral forms so damaged they would need time in the Hall of Valor to reconstitute properly. "We rescued 26 souls," Olaf reported, pride evident in his voice despite his weariness. "Denied to Alduin, safe in the hall now. A victory worth celebrating," Ysgramor acknowledged, "but tempered by those we lost, and those still trapped in the mist." His thoughts turned to Feldir's group, sent eastward toward Twilight Mountain where the bronze dragon perched. They had heard no word, seen no sign of their return. Had they succeeded in their rescue mission? Or had they encountered difficulties of their own? Soon, who had maintained his position at the bridge during the confrontation, approached them. "The path is clear for now, but Alduin's retreat is tactical, not permanent. He gathers his strength, coordinates his draconic servants. The next assault will be more organized, more focused." "Then we must be ready," Ysgramor replied. "But first, we need news of Feldir's band. They ventured east toward Twilight Mountain and have not returned." "I will maintain vigil here," Tsune offered. "Your warriors have earned rest and healing in the hall. Select a fresh force to search for Feldir if needed." Ysgramor nodded gratefully. Though technically of equal rank as Shield-Thanes, Tsune's divine nature and eternal duty at the bridge placed him in a unique position. His offer to maintain watch would allow the battle-weary warriors to recover properly. As they crossed the whalebone bridge and approached the Hall of Valor, Ysgramor could see activity along the walls, warriors repositioning, tongues establishing elevated firing positions, mages reinforcing magical wards. Olaf's defensive preparations had continued in their absence, the hall transforming from a place of celebration to a fortress prepared for siege. The massive doors swung open as they approached, revealing a hall still magnificent but significantly changed. Feasting tables had been pushed against walls to create open areas for wounded to recover. Weapon racks and armor stands had been set up at strategic points, allowing defenders to arm themselves quickly in case of attack. Stations for the creation of arrows, repair of shields, and mixing of potions dotted the periphery. And yet, somehow, the essential character of the hall remained. Warriors still raised drinking horns in toast to fallen comrades. Skalds still sang of heroic deeds, now including verses about the defense against Alduin. The fires in the great hearth still blazed warmly, defying the chill that had settled over SOVNGARD with the World Eater's arrival. The rescued souls from both Ysgramor and Olaf's missions had already been integrated into the hall's community, many of them volunteering for defensive duties despite their recent ordeals. Victoria, the imperial legate who had returned with the injured from Ysgramor's initial confrontation, approached with a disciplined salute. "Harbinger, I've organized the newcomers with military experience into auxiliary units to support the main defense. Most have chosen combat roles, but some with specialized skills have been assigned to healing, logistics, or intelligence gathering." "Well done," Ysgramor approved. "What of our wounded?" "Recovering faster than expected. Shor's presence in the hall accelerates the process considerably. Even those who were completely dispersed in battle are beginning to reform." This was welcome news. In SOVNGARD, there was no true death, A warrior's spectral form could be damaged or temporarily dispersed, but would eventually reform unless their soul was completely devoured by Alduin. The Hall of Valor, as Shor's direct domain, provided the optimal environment for such recovery. "Any word from Feldir's group?" Ysgramor asked. Victoria's expression turned concerned. "Nothing direct. But several hours ago, one of the Watchers reported seeing flashes of light from the direction of Twilight Mountain, like magical discharges or dragon fire at a great distance. Nothing since then." Ysgramor exchanged worried glances with Olaf. Feldir was one of the most powerful mages in Nordic history. His warband included several other skilled spellcasters, and he carried Shor's blessing of sight beyond. If they had been forced into direct confrontation with the bronze dragon, something must have gone seriously wrong. "I'll lead a search party," Olaf volunteered before Ysgramor could speak. "My warriors are less fatigued than yours. We engaged primarily in rescue operations until the final confrontation. Take a smaller group, emphasis on speed and stealth," Ysgramor advised. "If Feldir's in trouble, a large force might only draw more attention from Alduin and his servants." Olaf nodded agreement. 12 warriors, lightly armored, our best scouts and fastest runners. We'll find them and return before dawn." As Olaf departed to organize his search party, Ysgramor found himself momentarily alone, the weight of leadership settling heavily on his spectral shoulders. Despite the victories, souls rescued, dragons driven off, the hall secured, he couldn't escape the feeling that they were merely delaying the inevitable. Alduin grew stronger with each soul devoured, while their forces remained finite. Without the Dragonborn's arrival, their resistance was ultimately futile. He made his way to a quiet corner of the hall, where a small shrine to Shor stood unobtrusively among trophies of legendary hunts and battles. Unlike the elaborate temples of the living world, this simple stone alcove with its ancient Nordic carvings served as a direct connection to the god of the underworld. Ysgramor knelt before it, not in prayer as mortals understood it, but in a warrior's communion with his divine patron. "Lord Shor," he spoke quietly, pitching his voice for divine ears alone. "We fight with all our might, deny Alduin his prey when we can, prepare for the Dragonborn's arrival. But the dragon spoke true in one respect. Your direct presence has diminished as his influence grows. The souls of your faithful need more than blessings channeled through intermediaries. They need to know their God has not abandoned them to the World Eater's hunger." As expected, no immediate answer came. Shor's interactions with his realm had always been subtle, indirect, but Ysgramor felt something. A warming of the air around him, a slight brightening of the shrine's carvings, a resonance that vibrated through his spectral form. Not words, not images, but a sensation of approval, of acknowledgement. Ysgramor rose, oddly comforted despite the lack of concrete response. He returned to the main hall to find it abuzz with new activity. Olaf's search party preparing to depart, warriors still arriving from distant parts of Sovngard, where news of the defense had spread. The rescued souls sharing information about Alduin's activities in the misty regions beyond the hall's protection. A commotion at the main doors drew his attention. Warriors were gathering, voices raised in surprise and concern. Ysgramor pushed through the crowd to find Olaf's search party, not yet departed, gathered around a single figure who had just entered the hall. Emjar Longstride, Feldir's second-in-command, stood swaying with exhaustion, her spectral form showing signs of recent combat, tears in her armor, wounds partially healed but still visible. Her expression combined relief at reaching safety with the haunted look of one who had witnessed horrors. "Emjar," Ysgramor pushed forward to support her as she seemed about to collapse. "What happened? Where is Feldir?" "The others." She gripped his arm with surprising strength, her eyes focusing with effort. Ambush. The bronze dragon was waiting, not on the mountain peak as we thought, but hidden in a ravine along our approach. It knew we were coming somehow. Ysgramor helped her to a nearby bench, signaling for mead and healing potions to be brought. How many lost? 3 devoured before we could form a defensive position. 4 more severely injured, Feldir among them. She accepted a drinking horn with shaking hands, consuming its contents in several desperate gulps. We managed to reach the trapped souls, 17 of them, and fight our way clear of the immediate ambush. But our retreat was cut off. Cut off by what? A wall of mist, thicker than anything we'd encountered before. Impenetrable. No matter which direction we turned, it herded us away from the hall, toward a valley to the far east. Feldir, she paused, gathering herself. Feldir realized what was happening. The bronze dragon wasn't acting alone. It was forcing us toward Alduin himself. A chill ran through the assembled warriors at this news. The prospect of Alduin actively coordinating with his draconic servants to trap and devour the rescuers was disturbing confirmation of the World Eater's growing tactical acumen. Feldir ordered me to break through alone, Mjar continued, to bring warning while he led the others in a different direction, hoping to divide the pursuit and ensure at least one messenger reached the hall. Her eyes filled with spectral tears that glowed faintly in the hall's light. I didn't want to leave them, but he invoked his authority as leader of the mission, said the warning was more important than any individual's survival. Ysgramor placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. He was right, and Feldir is no ordinary soul. He bears Shor's blessing of sight beyond. If anyone can find a path through Alduin's deceptions, it's him. He was badly injured, Harbinger, and growing weaker. The sight beyond drains him with each use, and Alduin's mist seems to resist it more strongly now. This news troubled Ysgramor deeply. Feldir was not just a powerful mage and veteran warrior, but one of the original 3 heroes who had banished Alduin using an Elder Scroll in the Merethic era. His knowledge and abilities were irreplaceable in their current crisis. "Where did you last see them?" Olaf asked, already mentally adjusting his search mission's parameters. "Near the Valley of Ancient Voices, beyond the eastern ridges." Feldir planned to circle north through the mist canyons, hoping the narrow passages would prevent the dragon from following directly. Olaf nodded decisively. "Then that's where we'll start our search." "Ysgramor, with your permission." "Go." Ysgramor clasped forearms with the former High King. "But return by midday tomorrow regardless of what you find. If Alduin is deliberately targeting our rescue parties, we cannot risk losing more of our strongest warriors to ambush." As Olaf departed with his search party, Ysgramor turned back to Mjar, who had recovered some of her strength with the hall's restorative properties. "Tell me everything you observed about the bronze dragon's tactics, and any changes in Alduin's mist since our earlier missions. We need to understand how his strategies are evolving if we're to counter them effectively." For the next hour, Ysgramor gathered intelligence not just from Mjar, but from all the recently rescued souls, building a comprehensive picture of Alduin's activities across SOVNGARD. A pattern emerged. The World Eater was systematically consuming souls in the outermost regions first, working his way inward toward the Hall of Valor. His draconic servants maintained disciplined patrols, herding wandering souls into collection points for more efficient consumption. Most troubling was the evidence that Alduin could now shape the mist itself with greater precision, using it not just as concealment, but as an active barrier to control movement through SOVNGARD. What had begun as a disorienting fog had evolved into a malleable tool of containment and direction. As the intelligence briefing concluded, Ysgramor called together his most trusted lieutenants, warriors and leaders from across Nordic history who had proven themselves in the recent battles. "We face an adaptive enemy," he told them gravely. "Alduin learns from each engagement, refines his tactics, coordinates his servants with increasing efficiency. Our early successes came partly from surprise. He underestimated our resolve and capability. That advantage is now lost. So we adapt in turn," said Nicula's Iron Fist, pounding one spectral fist into the opposite palm. "Change our tactics, strike where he doesn't expect." "Precisely." Ysgramor gestured to a rough map of Sovngarde that had been sketched on a large piece of parchment, showing known landmarks and the approximate boundaries of Alduin's mist. "We've been reactive, responding to reports of souls in danger with direct rescue missions. Now we must become proactive." He outlined his revised strategy. Smaller, faster teams operating in relay patterns rather than single large warbands. Decoys to draw draconic attention, while extraction teams recovered souls from collection points. Magical countermeasures against Alduin's manipulated mist, developed by the Hall's most skilled mages. And most importantly, constant communication between teams to ensure no group could be isolated and overwhelmed as Feldier's had been. "Our primary goal remains unchanged," Ysgramor concluded. "Rescue as many souls as possible, deny Alduin the strength he seeks, prepare Sovngarde for the Dragonborn's arrival. But our methods must evolve as quickly as our enemies do." The meeting continued into the night, details refined, assignments distributed, contingencies planned for. Throughout the Hall of Valor, warriors prepared for the next phase of their defense against the World Eater, checking weapons, practicing coordinated shouts, studying the latest intelligence about draconic patrol patterns. Deep into what passed for night in Sovngarde, when most of the Hall's inhabitants had taken brief periods of rest to rejuvenate their spectral forms, Ysgramor stood alone on the uppermost balcony, gazing out over the mist-shrouded realm that had been his eternal reward for millennia. The landscape had changed dramatically since Alduin's arrival. Where once the ethereal beauty of Sovngarde had been visible for leagues in all directions, rolling plains of luminous grass, crystalline mountains that caught the light of the permanent aurora, rivers that flowed with liquid starlight. Now only the immediate vicinity of the hall remained clearly visible. Beyond that, Alduin's mist obscured everything, its boundaries creeping closer with each passing day. "How goes the defense, Shield-Thane?" The voice came from behind him, soft yet resonant with power beyond mortal comprehension. Ysgramor turned to find a hooded figure standing at the threshold of the balcony, Shor, Lord of Sovngarde, manifesting more fully than he had since Alduin's arrival. Ysgramor knelt immediately, Wuthred laid reverently before him. "Lord Shor, your presence honors us. Rise, old friend." The god's hooded face remained shadowed, but pinpoints of light like distant stars gleamed within that darkness. "I did not appear to receive obeisance, but to speak with the defender of my realm directly." Ysgramor stood, though he maintained a respectful posture. "We fight with all our strength, my lord. Souls have been rescued, dragons driven back. But Alduin grows stronger, his tactics more refined. He shapes the mist to his will now, uses it to control movement through Sovngarde." Shor moved to the balcony's edge, gazing out at the encroaching mist. His form seemed both substantial and ethereal simultaneously, a divine paradox manifested in the afterlife. "Yes, the World Eater consumes more than just souls. He absorbs power, knowledge, dominion. Each victory feeds not just his strength, but his understanding. We've adjusted our strategies accordingly," Ysgramor reported. "Smaller teams, coordinated movements, magical countermeasures. But without direct divine intervention, which cannot come." Shor's voice held a note of regret rare for divine beings. "Surely you understand why, Ysgramor. You who have studied the ancient prophecies, you who have witnessed the turning of historical wheels across millennia. The prophecy constrains even the gods, Ysgramor acknowledged reluctantly. Alduin's return, his confrontation with the Dragonborn, these are fixed points in time that cannot be altered without greater catastrophe. Precisely. Shor turned to face him fully, those stellar points within his hood intensifying. The last Dragonborn must face the World Eater as foretold. Direct divine intervention would unravel the prophetic tapestry, potentially dooming not just Sovngarde but all creation. Then why come to me now? After remaining distant, while Alduin's influence spread across your realm, Shor's form shifted slightly, as if the question touched on divine constraints difficult to articulate to even the most enlightened mortal soul. Because the prophecy speaks primarily of the mortal realm, of Nirn where the Dragonborn walks, it binds my actions there most strictly. Here, in Sovngarde, I have flexibility, not enough to confront Alduin directly, but enough to strengthen those who stand against him. The god moved closer, and Ysgramor felt a surge of divine energy emanating from his ethereal form. The blessing I granted you before was significant but limited. Now I extend it further, not just to you and your fellow Shield-Thanes, but through you to all who defend this hall. Shor raised both hands, and a wave of golden light radiated outward, passing through Ysgramor like a warm summer breeze. He felt it settle into his spectral essence, not just reinforcing his already enhanced abilities but linking him somehow to every warrior in the Hall of Valor. What you feel is the resonance of valor, Shor explained. Through it, the strength of one becomes the strength of many. When warriors fight in proximity to each other, their individual skills and powers will amplify, creating a whole greater than its parts. It is how the earliest Nords stood against the elves despite being outnumbered, how they survived the bitter winters of Atmora before the migration. Ysgramor understood immediately the tactical implications. Their coordinated teams would now benefit from exponential rather than merely additive strength in combat. Against supernatural foes like dragons, such multiplication of force could prove decisive. There is more, Shor continued. The mist that Alduin shapes to his will is not natural to Sovngarde. It is an intrusion, a corruption of my realm's essential nature. Through the resonance, warriors fighting together can temporarily clear paths through it, restore the natural order where they stand united. This could change everything, Ysgramor said, his mind already reformulating strategies based on these new capabilities. Our rescue operations, our defensive positions, all can be enhanced through coordinated action. Use it wisely. Shor's form began to fade slightly, the manifestation clearly requiring significant divine effort to maintain in the face of Alduin's growing influence. The resonance draws upon the very foundation of Sovngarde itself, upon the original divine intent that shaped this realm as reward for Nordic valor. It cannot be sustained indefinitely against Alduin's corruption. Before completely fading, Shor added one final counsel. The Dragonborn approaches Shield-Thane. Already she walks the path that leads to Sovngarde, though obstacles remain in her mortal journey. Be ready. The final battle draws nearer with each soul saved or lost. With those words, the god's manifestation dissipated completely, leaving Ysgramor alone on the balcony once more. But he didn't feel alone. The resonance of valor connected him to every defender in the hall, a web of shared purpose and power that hummed just beneath conscious perception. He turned back to gaze out over the mist-shrouded realm, and for the first time since Alduin's arrival, genuine hope kindled in his ancient soul. The World Eater was mighty beyond mortal comprehension, his draconic servants formidable in their own right. But now the defenders of Sovngarde had received a divine countermeasure, a force multiplier that could potentially turn the tide until the prophesied Dragonborn arrived. As if in response to his renewed confidence, a distant roar echoed across the shrouded landscape, Alduin's challenge and promise combined. The World Eater still hunted, still devoured, still corrupted Shor's realm with his malevolent presence, but no longer unopposed, no longer against disorganized resistance. Now he would face the combined might of Nordic heroes throughout history, bound together by the resonance of valor, their individual strengths amplified through unity of purpose. Ysgramor turned from the balcony and strode purposefully back into the Hall of Valor. There was much to do before dawn, strategies to revise, warriors to inform, rescue operations to reorganize based on their new capabilities. And somewhere in the mist, Feldir and his band still sought a path back to safety, while Olaf and his search party risked themselves to find them. The confrontation with Alduin was far from over. Indeed, the most difficult challenges likely lay ahead. But for the first time since the World Eater's shadow had fallen across Sovngarde, Ysgramor allowed himself to believe not just in eventual victory, but in the preservation of all they held sacred until that victory could be achieved. In the distance, through a momentary thinning of the mist, a flash of light caught his eye, arcane energy discharged in combat perhaps, or the fire of a dragon's breath. The search continued, the battle raged on, and Ysgramor, first harbinger of the companions, Shield-Thane of Sovngarde, would lead his warriors into that conflict with renewed determination and divine blessing. The fate of not just this afterlife but all creation hung in the balance, and until the Dragonborn arrived to fulfill the prophecy, they would stand as the only barrier between Alduin's hunger and the souls of the honored dead. Chapter 3. The Dragonborn Comes. The search for Feldir and his band continued throughout the night. Olaf One-Eye led his warriors through treacherous paths that wound between Alduin's thickening mist, guided by Mjar's detailed descriptions, and the faint traces of magical energy still lingering from the earlier confrontation. The resonance of valor that Shor had granted proved invaluable, allowing them to move as a coordinated unit with heightened awareness of their surroundings and each other's intentions. Near what would have been dawn in the mortal realm, though in Sovngarde time flowed differently and true darkness never fell, Olaf's group returned to the Hall of Valor, their expressions grim but determined. Behind them came Feldir's band, reduced in number but alive, with 23 rescued souls in tow. Ysgramor met them at the great doors, relief evident in his weathered features as he clasped forearms with Feldir. The ancient mage looked haggard, his spectral form wavering slightly around the edges, but his eyes retained their characteristic intensity. "We feared the worst," Ysgramor said, helping Feldir into the hall while warriors assisted the other injured members of the band. "Nearly was," Feldir replied, his voice rasping with exhaustion. Ambushed by the bronze dragon, then herded toward a valley where Alduin himself waited. We lost 5 warriors completely, devoured by the World Eater before we could intervene. Sorrow darkened Ysgramor's expression. Each soul lost to Alduin's hunger was a double tragedy, a valiant warrior removed from their eternal reward, and additional power granted to their greatest enemy. But you rescued the trapped souls. All 17 we set out to save, plus 6 more we encountered during our retreat. Feldir gestured to the spectral forms being welcomed by the hall's inhabitants. They had hidden themselves in a cave system beneath Twilight Mountain, which protected them from draconic sight, but left them unable to find the path to the hall. Olaf joined them, his one good eye surveying the new arrivals with a general's assessment. "We found them in the mist canyons, making a fighting retreat against not just the bronze dragon but a 4th we hadn't seen before, silver-scaled, smaller but faster than the others. They had established a defensive perimeter using Feldir's magic to create a dome of force, that the dragons couldn't penetrate directly. But it was failing, Feldir added. The dragons took turns assaulting it from different angles, wearing down my reserves. Another hour and they would have broken through. Ysgramor helped the exhausted mage to a seat near one of the great hearths, where serving maidens quickly provided mead and food to restore his strength. Rest now. Once you've recovered, we need to discuss what you learned about this new silver dragon and any other observations that might help our defense. As Feldir and his rescued warriors settled in, Ysgramor convened with Olaf and his other lieutenants to share the news of Shor's latest blessing. The Resonance of Valor had already proven effective during the search and rescue operation, but its full potential remained to be explored. It's more than just enhanced coordination, Olaf reported, his weathered face animated with rare enthusiasm. When we engaged the bronze and silver dragons to cover Feldir's retreat, our thumb combined in ways I've never experienced. The shock waves visibly reinforced each other, striking with at least triple the expected force. Shor called it multiplication rather than mere addition, Ysgramor nodded. The whole becoming greater than the sum of its parts. This changes our defensive strategy significantly. They spent the next hour revising their plans based on this new advantage, restructuring their forces into carefully balanced teams that maximize the resonance effect. Each group would include tongues, conventional warriors, archers, and mages, positioned so their individual strengths could amplify those of their companions. As the planning session concluded, a commotion at the hall's entrance drew their attention. Tsune himself stood in the massive doorway, an unprecedented occurrence, as the bridge guardian never left his post except under the most extraordinary circumstances. Shield-Thane, the god hero addressed Ysgramor formally, his divine voice carrying throughout the hall despite its moderate volume. I bring word from beyond SOVNGARD. The Dragonborn has entered Shield-Thane Temple in the mortal realm. She approaches the portal. A ripple of excitement and tension spread through the gathered warriors. Shield-Thane, the ancient dragon temple high in the Geral Mountains, contained one of the few direct portals between Nirn and SOVNGARD. If the Dragonborn had reached it, her arrival was imminent. How long? Ysgramor asked, already calculating the defensive adjustments needed. Time flows differently between realms, Tsune replied. But soon, very soon, hours at most by your reckoning. And Alduin, does he know? Tsune's ageless face showed a rare expression, concern tinged with uncertainty. The World Eater's awareness extends to many planes. He has withdrawn from active hunting to the peak of the Soul-Cairn Mountain. His draconic servants gather there as well. He prepares for her arrival in his own way. This new generated mixed reactions among the warriors. The cessation of active soul hunting was welcome, but Alduin's strategic withdrawal and consolidation of forces suggested he was marshaling his strength for the prophesied confrontation. We must clear the path from the portal to the hall, Ysgramor decided immediately. The Dragonborn will emerge into SOVNGARD disoriented, vulnerable. We cannot allow Alduin to ambush her before she reaches safety. Agreed, Olaf said. I'll lead a force to secure the portal approach. With the resonance enhancing our capabilities, we can establish a protected corridor through the mist. I will return to my post at the bridge, Tsune announced. The Dragonborn must face me in traditional challenge before entering the hall. Such is the unbreakable law of SOVNGARD. But I will ensure no draconic interference during that sacred test. As Tsune departed and Olaf began organizing his portal security force, Feldir approached Ysgramor. The ancient mage had recovered somewhat, his spectral form more stable, though still bearing the marks of his ordeal. There is something you should know, he said quietly, leading Ysgramor to a more private corner of the hall. Something I observed during our captivity in the Mist Canyons. Ysgramor recognized the gravity in Feldir's tone. What is it? Alduin's mist. It's not merely a tool for confusion or concealment. It's a manifestation of his growing dominion over Sovngarde itself. I use the sight beyond to study its composition, while maintaining our protective dome. Feldir's eyes showed the haunted look of one who had glimpsed cosmic truths not meant for mortal comprehension. The mist consumes reality, Ysgramor. It erodes the divine structure of Sovngarde at a fundamental level. Meaning what exactly? Meaning that given enough time and enough devoured souls, Alduin could remake Sovngarde entirely, transform it from Shor's realm of honored dead into something else, a domain of draconic dominion perhaps, or simply another facet of his own being. Feldir clasped Ysgramor's shoulder urgently. This is no mere predation. It is metaphysical conquest on a scale I've not seen since you and your fellow tongues faced Alduin in the Merethic era, Ysgramor finished for him. Yes, but then we merely banished him through time using the Elder Scroll. We never truly defeated him, never diminished his essential nature. That task awaits the Dragonborn alone. This revelation added new urgency to their preparations. Alduin threatened not just individual souls but the continued existence of Sovngarde itself. If the Dragonborn failed, or arrived too late, the warrior's paradise could be irreparably transformed. Can we counter this erosion? Ysgramor asked. The Resonance of Valor allows us to temporarily clear the mist. Could that effect be expanded, made permanent? Feldir considered this. Possibly. With enough warriors acting in concert, with Shor's blessing at full potency, we might be able to reclaim portions of Sovngarde, restore them to their original state. Not the entire realm. That would require divine intervention beyond what Shor can provide while constrained by prophecy, but perhaps enough to secure the Dragonborn's path to confrontation. With this goal in mind, they refined their strategy further. Olaf's force would establish the initial secure corridor from the portal to the hall. Once the Dragonborn arrived and recovered from her journey, they would create a larger zone of restored reality, extending from the hall to whichever location Alduin chose for the final confrontation. Likely the Soulcairn Mountain, where he had withdrawn to gather his strength. As these preparations unfolded, Ysgramor felt a subtle shift in Sovngarde's ethereal atmosphere. The air seemed to vibrate at a frequency just below conscious perception, a tension building like the moment before lightning strikes. He recognized the signs from ancient lore, the barriers between realms thinning, a portal preparing to activate. "It begins," he murmured, more to himself than anyone nearby. "She comes." The portal to Sovngarde manifested above a valley several leagues from the Hall of Valor. Unlike conventional magic that might create a doorway or gateway, this was a vertical tier in reality itself, a writhing column of energy that connected Nirn and the afterlife through paths beyond mortal comprehension. Olaf One-Eye had positioned his force in a defensive perimeter around the projected arrival point. Warriors arranged in concentric circles, with tongues spaced evenly to maintain the cleared zone through the resonance of valor. The mist beyond their position roiled and darkened, as if aware of their purpose and resistant to it. "Hold the line," Olaf commanded as the portal's energy intensified, casting an eerie blue-white light across the valley. "No matter what emerges, no matter what follows, we maintain this position until the Dragonborn is safely escorted to the bridge." The warriors stood ready, weapons drawn, eyes fixed on the pulsating tier in reality. Many had died fighting dragons in life. Some had even fallen to Alduin himself during his return to Nirn. The opportunity to participate in his prophesied defeat, even indirectly, brought a sense of cosmic symmetry to their eternal existence. With a sound like 1,000 thunderclaps compressed into a single instant, the portal flared blindingly bright. A figure emerged from the vertical tier, a woman in ornate armor of a style unfamiliar to most of the ancient warriors, though those who had died more recently recognized the distinctive craftsmanship of Skyrim's legendary Eärlund Greymane. She descended slowly to the ground, the portal's energy dispersing around her like water breaking against rock. Her face was obscured by a horned helmet, but her stance and movement spoke of both power and wariness, a warrior entering unknown territory with appropriate caution. As her feet touched the ethereal soil of Sovngarde, the portal collapsed behind her with a final surge of energy. For a moment, she stood motionless, taking in her surroundings. Then, with deliberate movements, she removed her helmet. Her features were distinctly Nordic: high cheekbones, strong jaw, piercing blue eyes that held wisdom beyond her apparent years. A scar ran from temple to chin on the left side of her face, evidence of battles survived through skill rather than luck. Her hair, braided intricately in traditional Nordic style, was the color of spun gold in Sovngarde's ethereal light. "The Dragonborn," Olaf announced, stepping forward with his axe lowered respectfully. "I am Olaf One-Eye, once High King of Skyrim, now Shield Brother in Shor's service. We've come to escort you safely to the Hall of Valor." The woman's eyes widened slightly at the mention of his name, recognition of a historical figure she likely knew from legend. But she recovered quickly, the discipline of a seasoned warrior asserting itself. "I am Freydis Storm-Crowned," she replied, her voice carrying the faintest echo of draconic power even in normal speech. "Dragonborn, Thane of Whiterun, and apparently now visitor to the afterlife despite being inconveniently alive." A smile touched Olaf's scarred face at her dry humor. "These are unusual times, Dragonborn. The boundaries between realms grow thin when prophecy approaches fulfillment. So I've noticed." Freydis surveyed the defensive perimeter of warriors, her experienced eye clearly assessing their tactical position. "I expected to find Sovngarde overrun by Alduin's power. Instead, I find an organized resistance. This is not what the legends prepared me for." The World Eater hunts souls throughout Sovngarde, using a mist of his creation to confuse and trap the worthy dead before they can reach Shor's hall. "We've been fighting to rescue as many as possible while awaiting your arrival." Olaf gestured to the cleared zone they maintained through the Resonance of Valor. "This respite exists only through Shor's blessing and Nordic determination." Freydis absorbed this information with a nod, her gaze turning to the darkened mist beyond their perimeter. "I sense him, Alduin. His presence permeates this realm more thoroughly than in Nirn. He has devoured many souls, growing stronger with each one. But he has withdrawn temporarily to Solcairn Mountain, gathering his strength for your prophesied confrontation." Olaf pointed to a distant peak, barely visible through occasional thinning in the mist. "We believe he will face you there, where the barriers between Sovngarde and Ithurius are naturally thinner. Then we shouldn't keep him waiting." Freydis adjusted her armor and checked her weapons, a sword of distinctive design at her hip and a bow slung across her back. "Lead on to this Hall of Valor. I have questions for its inhabitants before I face the World Eater." Olaf signaled his warriors, who reformed their formation around Freydis, not surrounding her as a prisoner, but arranged to maximize the resonance effect, creating a mobile zone of cleared reality as they began the journey toward the hall. As they proceeded through the valley, Freydis studied the landscape with intense interest. For a living mortal to walk in Sovngarde was virtually unprecedented, and despite the dire circumstances, her scholarly curiosity was evident. She asked questions about landmarks they passed, about the nature of spectral existence, about the history of Shor's realm. The warriors answered as best they could, though many aspects of Sovngarde simply defied mortal explanation. How does one describe colors that exist beyond the spectrum visible in Nirn, or the sensation of existing as pure soul essence given spectral form by divine will? These were experiences that transcended language, comprehensible only through direct perception. Their journey proceeded without draconic interference, though several times they observed shadows circling high above the mist, Alduin's servants maintaining surveillance while honoring their master's temporary withdrawal. The resonance of valor continued to hold, the combined power of the warriors creating a bubble of clear reality that moved with them through the corrupted landscape. As they approached the whalebone bridge, a solitary figure came into view, soon, standing as he had since time immemorial, massive axe in hand, eternal guardian of the path to the Hall of Valor. "This is where I leave you, Dragonborn," Olaf said as they reached the bridge's approach. "By ancient law, all who seek entry to the hall must face soon in honorable combat to prove their worth. Even one of your destiny cannot bypass this sacred test." Frades nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Prophecy may guide our paths, but tradition shapes who we are. I wouldn't have it any other way." Olaf clasped forearms with her in the warrior's grip. "Fight well, Dragonborn. We will await you in the hall, where Ysgramor himself prepares for the final battle against the World Eater." As Olaf and his warriors withdrew to a respectful distance, Frades approached soon alone. The god hero straightened to his full, imposing height, his ancient eyes assessing the living mortal who stood before him. "What brings you, wayfarer grim, to wander here in Sovngarde, Soul's End, Shor's gift to honored dead?" Tsun's formal challenge echoed across the chasm beneath the bridge. "I pursue Alduin, the World Eater," Frades replied, matching his formal tone. "My fate to face him here at the end and the beginning." "A bold claim, mortal. Has doom driven you to this folly? Alduin devours the souls of those who die true deaths in your world now. Soon, he will devour all things, including you." Tsun's voice held neither malice nor doubt, merely the statement of what he perceived as inevitable truth. "That remains to be seen," Frades said, her hand moving to the hilt of her sword, not drawing it yet but preparing. "I seek entrance to the Hall of Valor to speak with the heroes of old who first faced Alduin. No shade are you, as usually here passes, but living, you dare the land of the dead." Tsun's massive axe shifted in his grip, moving into a combat-ready position. "By what right do you request entry to the Hall of Valor?" Frades stood straighter, her voice clear and confident. "By right of birth, I am Dragonborn." A smile, the first any had seen in centuries, briefly touched Tsun's ageless face. "Ah, it's been too long since last I faced a doom-driven hero of the dragon blood. But first, prove your worth according to ancient tradition. Only those who triumph over me may pass into the hall." Without further warning, Tsun charged, his divine speed belying his massive size. His axe swept in a horizontal arc that would have severed a mortal in half had it connected. But Frades was no ordinary mortal. She moved with preternatural grace, ducking under the blow while drawing her sword in a smooth motion. *Fuss Aroda. Her unrelenting force shout struck Tsun with visible impact, though the god hero merely slid backward several feet rather than being thrown as a mortal would have been. He laughed, a sound like distant avalanches, and pressed his attack with renewed vigor. The duel that followed was breathtaking to behold, even for the seasoned warriors observing from a distance. Tsun's divine strength and millennia of combat experience against Frades' dragonborn reflexes and mastery of both conventional fighting and the thumb. They moved in a deadly dance across the approach to the bridge, neither giving ground unnecessarily, both showing respect for the other's skill. When Frades used a whirlwind sprint shout to evade a particularly devastating vertical strike, reappearing behind Tsun with her sword already swinging toward his exposed back. The watching warriors erupted in appreciative shouts. When Tsun countered by stomping the ground with such force that it cracked beneath their feet, momentarily staggering Frades and allowing him to score a glancing blow across her armor, they pounded their weapons against shields in acknowledgement of his tactical brilliance. The contest continued for what might have been minutes or hours, time's flow in Sovngarde making precise measurement impossible, until finally, after an exchange of blows that left both combatants breathing heavily, Tsun stepped back and lowered his axe. "Enough," he declared, satisfaction evident in his voice. "You have proven your worth, Dragonborn. Few have ever matched me so evenly in combat and none in recent memory." Frades lowered her sword as well, respect in her eyes. "You fight with honor and skill, beyond any I've faced in the mortal realm. As do you." Tsun gestured toward the whalebone bridge with his free hand. "You may cross to the Hall of Valor, Dragonborn. Shor's divine hospitality awaits, as do the heroes you seek." Frades sheathed her sword and bowed slightly to the bridge guardian, before turning toward the magnificent structure that spanned the chasm. The whalebone bridge seemed to glow from within as she approached, responding to her dragonborn essence in a way it did not for ordinary souls. As she crossed, the ethereal winds of Sovngarde swirled around her, carrying whispers of ancient power and prophecy. The mist that had encroached so near to the Hall of Valor retreated slightly, as if repelled by her mere presence. Even Alduin's corruption recognized the approach of its prophesied nemesis. On the far side, the Hall of Valor stood magnificent and defiant against the darkened sky, a bastion of Nord glory and tradition, illuminated from within by fires that had burned since the dawn of creation. Its massive doors swung open as Frades approached, revealing the gathered heroes of Nordic history, waiting to receive the Dragonborn whose coming had been foretold since the Merethic era. At their head stood Ysgramor himself, the legendary first harbinger, Wuthred gleaming in his grasp. Beside him were Feldir the Old and his fellow ancient tongues who had once banished Alduin through time. Arranged behind them in order of honor were hundreds of the greatest warriors in Nord history, from kings and queens to common soldiers whose uncommon valor had earned them places in Sovngarde. "Welcome, Dragonborn." Ysgramor's voice carried the weight of millennia, the collective pride of Nordic tradition. "Long have we awaited your arrival." Frades stepped into the Hall of Valor, her living presence creating visible ripples in the ethereal atmosphere. Not disruption but recognition, as if Sovngarde itself acknowledged her unique nature as bridge between mortal and divine, between living and dead. "I come seeking knowledge," she replied, her gaze moving from Ysgramor to Feldir and the other tongues. "And allies in the battle to come." Ysgramor nodded in understanding. "Both await you here. But first, as tradition demands, mead and feast to honor our distinguished guest." He gestured toward the great tables that lined the hall, laden with food and drink beyond mortal imagining. "Then counsel, strategy, and preparation for the confrontation prophecy has decreed." "Time is precious," Frades cautioned, glancing back toward the open doors where the mist-shrouded landscape of Sovngarde was visible. "Alduin grows stronger with each soul he devours." "Fear not," Feldir assured her, stepping forward. "The World Eater has withdrawn to Solcairn Mountain to prepare for your arrival. He will not strike until you seek him out. His pride demands a formal confrontation on ground of his choosing." "Besides," added Olaf One-Eye, who had entered behind her after crossing the bridge, "time flows differently here. What seems hours to us may be mere moments in the mortal realm. The feast honors you and fortifies you for the battle ahead. It would be unwise to reject Shor's hospitality." Understanding the importance of tradition and not wishing to offend her hosts, Frades acquiesced. The massive doors of the hall closed behind her as Ysgramor led her to a place of honor at the central table. Warriors raised drinking horns in salute. Skalds struck up songs celebrating her exploits in the mortal realm, tales that had somehow reached Sovngarde ahead of her arrival, and servers brought platters heaped with ethereal delicacies. Yet beneath the celebration lay purpose. As mead flowed and tales were exchanged, Ysgramor quietly arranged for the hall's most knowledgeable souls to join them, those with particular insight into Alduin's nature, weaknesses, and tactics. Feldir and his fellow tongue shared their experience from the original confrontation that had banished the World Eater. Warriors who had died fighting dragons during Alduin's recent return to Nirn offered observations about changes in draconic behavior and capabilities. Throughout it all, Frades absorbed information with the focus of one born to a destiny of world-altering significance. She asked precise questions, tested theories against known facts, and gradually assembled a comprehensive understanding of what awaited her on Solcairn Mountain. As the feast concluded, she sought out Ysgramor for a more private conversation, away from the main celebration. The first harbinger led her to a quiet alcove near one of the great hearths, where they could speak without interruption. "You've organized an impressive resistance," Frades observed, gesturing toward the hall where warriors continued preparations even amid the celebration. "When I entered Skuldhafen Temple, the Greybeards warned me I would find Sovngarde overrun by Alduin's power, souls lost in mist, the hall itself perhaps unreachable. That would have been our fate without Shor's blessing," Ysgramor acknowledged. "The Resonance of Valor allows us to maintain cleared zones through the mist, to rescue souls before Alduin can devour them. But it is a holding action only. Without you, Dragonborn, our eventual defeat would be inevitable. Tell me about this resonance. It's not mentioned in any lore I studied." Ysgramor explained the divine blessing Shor had granted them, the ability for warriors fighting together to multiply each other's strength, to temporarily restore Sovngarde's natural state by acting in concert. "It has allowed us to deny Alduin many souls he would otherwise have claimed, keeping him from reaching his full potential before your arrival." Frades considered this thoughtfully. "Could this resonance aid me in the final confrontation? Prophecy speaks of the Dragonborn facing Alduin alone, but prophecies are often imprecise in their wording." A slow smile spread across Ysgramor's weathered features. "Indeed they are. And while the final blow must be yours alone, only the Dragonborn can truly slay the World Eater. Nothing in the prophecy prohibits assistance in weakening him beforehand." "My thoughts exactly." Frades leaned forward, her voice lowering conspiratorially. "I mastered Dragonrend, the shout your contemporaries created to force dragons to experience mortality. But Alduin is no ordinary dragon. Any advantage I can gain would be welcome. Then I offer you this." Ysgramor placed his hand on her shoulder, and Frades felt a surge of energy pass between them, a fraction of the resonance of valor, adapted to her living form. "You cannot access the full resonance as we do. The living are not naturally attuned to Sovngarde's essence. But this partial connection will allow you to call upon our strength at need." "How will it manifest?" "When the moment is dire, when you stand most in need, call out to Shor and to the heroes of Sovngarde. We will answer in the only way prophecy allows, not by direct intervention, but by lending you our collective strength for a crucial moment." Frades nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Harbinger. I will use this gift wisely." Their conversation was interrupted by Feldir's approach. The ancient mage had been conferring with his fellow tongues, examining magical patterns in Sovngarde's ethereal structure. His expression conveyed both urgency and new understanding. "Dragonborn, Harbinger," he addressed them formally, We have discovered something critical about Alduin's withdrawal to Soul-Cairn Mountain. It is not merely tactical positioning for the prophesied battle. He actively reshapes reality there, creating a domain where his power reaches its peak. Explain, Ysgramor commanded, recognizing the significance in Feldir's tone. The mountain has always been a nexus point where SOVNGARD'S essence connects most strongly to Aetherius, the realm of magic and cosmic energy. By establishing dominance there, Alduin taps into fundamental forces beyond even what devouring souls provides him. Feldir's ancient eyes fixed on Frades. He prepares to transcend his role as World Eater, to become something more. Something worse, you mean, Frades said grimly. Indeed, if allowed to complete this transformation, he would surpass even the prophecy's constraints, become truly unkillable, beyond even a Dragonborn's capability to defeat. The implications were clear. Frades couldn't afford to delay the confrontation any longer. Each moment allowed Alduin to further consolidate his position at the nexus point, strengthening his already formidable power. "How long before this transformation completes?" she asked. "Impossible to say with precision," Feldir admitted. "But soon, hours at most by SOVNGARD'S reckoning." Ysgramor rose to his feet, decision made. "Then we move now, not just the Dragonborn but all of us. Every warrior in this hall who can wield weapon or voice." "To what end?" Feldir asked, though his tone suggested he already anticipated the answer. "We cannot directly participate in the final confrontation, prophecy forbids it, but we can clear the path to Soul-Cairn Mountain, push back Alduin's mist, restore enough of SOVNGARD'S natural state to deny him the corrupted power he draws from it." Ysgramor turned to Frades. "The final battle remains yours alone, Dragonborn, but we can ensure you face him on more equal terms than he intends." Frades stood as well, determination hardening her features. "Then let us waste no more time. Alduin has terrorized both the living and the dead for too long already." Ysgramor returned to the main hall, his voice rising above the celebration with the power of command that had once led the 500 companions. "Warriors of SOVNGARDE'S, the time of waiting ends. The Dragonborn has come, and with her our opportunity to strike against the World Eater." The hall fell silent, all eyes turning toward him as he outlined their strategy. Every able warrior would march on Soul-Cairn Mountain, using the Resonance of Valor to clear a path through Alduin's mist and restore SOVNGARD'S natural state as they advanced. They would form concentric rings around the mountain's base, pushing back corruption, denying Alduin the unnatural advantage he sought to claim. "We cannot strike the final blow. Prophecy reserves that for the Dragonborn alone, but we can ensure the confrontation occurs on more equal ground, with SOVNGARD'S essence supporting its champion rather than its despoiler." A thunderous cheer rose from the assembled heroes. Drinking horns raised in salute to both Ysgramor's leadership and Frades' destined role. Weapons were checked, armor adjusted, final preparations made with the efficiency of warriors who had trained and fought for centuries in their eternal reward. Within the hour, they stood ready before the Hall of Valor, hundreds of the greatest Nordic heroes throughout history, arranged in battle formation, with Frades at their center. Ysgramor, Feldir, and Olaf took positions at the vanguard, with Soon joining them from his post at the bridge after Shor's direct dispensation allowed him to leave his eternal duty for this crucial endeavor. "Forward!" Ysgramor's command echoed across SOVNGARD, and as one, the army of the honored dead began their march towards Soul-Cairn Mountain. The Resonance of Valor manifested visibly now, a golden light that surrounded each warrior and connected them to their shield siblings in pulsing threads of divine energy. Where this light touched Alduin's mist, the corruption receded, revealing SOVNGARD as it was meant to be, a realm of breathtaking beauty, of crystalline mountains and flowing fields of ethereal grain, of rivers that sparkled with starlight and flowers that bloomed with colors unknown to mortal eyes. Their advance did not go unchallenged. Alduin's draconic servants descended from the darkened sky, attempting to disrupt their formation and break the resonance effect. The crimson, emerald, bronze, and silver dragons that had hunted souls throughout Sovngarde now focused their attacks on the approaching army, their thumb carving fiery, frozen, and electrified swaths through the spectral ranks. But the warriors of Sovngarde had faced dragons in life and proved worthy of the Hall of Valor. Now, enhanced by Shor's blessing and fighting as a unified force, they met the draconic assault with unprecedented coordination. Tongues combined their shouts to ground the flying attackers. Archers loosed volley after volley of spectral arrows, finding weaknesses between scales. Warriors with shield and blade formed impenetrable formations that advanced relentlessly despite the dragon's most devastating attacks. At the heart of it all moved Freydis storm-crowned, the living dragonborn among the honored dead. Where she walked, the resonance grew stronger, her unique nature as bridge between mortal and divine, amplifying Shor's blessing. Her thumb, raw and powerful in a way distinct from the practiced shouts of the ancient tongues, struck the attacking dragons with devastating effect, temporarily dispersing their spectral forms and sending them retreating to recover. Gradually, inexorably, the army approached the base of Soulcairn Mountain. The landscape around them transformed as they advanced. Alduin's corruption pushed back in an expanding circle of restored reality. Warriors who fell to draconic attacks were quickly replaced by others stepping forward, the formation maintained, the resonance preserved. At the mountain's base, they halted according to plan. Ysgramor raised Wuthrad high, signaling the transition to the next phase. The warriors arranged themselves in concentric circles around the mountain, each ring composed of heroes whose strengths complemented each other, maximizing the resonance effect. Hold this ground, Ysgramor's command carried to every warrior. Push back the corruption, restore Sovngarde's essence, give the Dragonborn the foundation she needs to face the World Eater. As the circles formed and locked into place, the combined effect of hundreds of warriors channeling the resonance of valor created a phenomenon unprecedented in Sovngarde's history. The golden light that had surrounded them individually now expanded outward in a dome that encompassed the entire mountain. Where this light touched Alduin's mist, the corruption didn't merely retreat but dissolved completely, revealing Sovngarde in its full, uncorrupted glory. The mountain itself seemed to respond, its crystalline structure gleaming with renewed brilliance, the nexus point at its peak pulsing with the pure energy of creation rather than Alduin's corrupting influence. Rivers of light flowed down its slopes, carrying power not seen since Sovngarde's formation at the dawn of time. From the summit came a roar of primal fury. Alduin, sensing his carefully constructed advantage crumbling beneath the combined might of Sovngarde's heroes. The World Eater's massive form appeared against the now cleared sky, his ebon scales absorbing light rather than reflecting it, his eyes burning with malevolence beyond mortal comprehension. Tahrodismeyye. His voice shook the mountain itself. Treacherous fools, you delay the inevitable. This realm falls to me by right of conquest, as all realms shall in the final reckoning. The four lesser dragons, crimson, emerald, bronze, and silver, rallied to their master, forming a protective formation around him as they circled the mountain's peak. Their combined roars created dissonant harmonics that assaulted not just hearing, but the very essence of those who stood against them. Ysgramor turned to Freydis, who stood ready at the front of the innermost circle, her gaze fixed on the creatures circling above. This is as far as we can take you, Dragonborn. From here, you must ascend alone to face your destiny. But know that every warrior of Sovngarde stands with you in spirit, our strength yours to call upon in your moment of greatest need. Freydis clasped forearms with the legendary Harbinger, in the traditional Nordic warrior's grip. I go to face him now, but not truly alone. The combined valor of Nord heroes throughout history goes with me. She looked beyond Ysgramor to the hundreds of warriors maintaining the resonance effect. Whatever happens, know that your stand here has already achieved victory. Sovngarde remains Shor's realm, not Alduin's playground. With these words, she turned toward the path that wound up the mountainside. As she began her ascent, a song rose from the warriors below, first from a single voice, then spreading until every hero joined the ancient melody. Davakian, Davakian, Naloke zin los varian. Wadain vocal mafirak astval. Ikfin norak pal grun. Fad nust hunzindro zon. Davakian, fahin kagun mu drawl. The song of the Dragonborn, carried on the voices of those who had inspired it across millennia, echoed throughout the restored realm of Sovngarde. It strengthened the resonance of valor, infused Freydis with the collective power of Nordic tradition, and most significantly, cast uncertainty into Alduin's burning gaze as he watched her steady approach. The path to Solcairn Mountain's summit wound through terrain both beautiful and treacherous. Crystal formations that caught and refracted light in hypnotic patterns, drops that plunged into seemingly bottomless ravines, narrow bridges of pure energy spanning impossible gaps. Yet Freydis advanced steadily, her dragonborn instincts guiding her where mortal perception might have faltered. Above, Alduin and his draconic servants continued to circle, watching her progress. Occasionally, one would dive toward her, unleashing fire or frost or lightning in a probing attack. Each time, Freydis responded with precisely enough force to deter without depleting her reserves. A measured application of the thumb that spoke of disciplined power held in check for the greater confrontation to come. As she neared the summit, the nature of the mountain changed. The crystalline beauty gave way to a more primal landscape, volcanic rock interspersed with veins of material that resembled solidified darkness, remnants of Alduin's attempted corruption, now frozen in place by the resonance effect maintained by the warriors below. Finally, she reached the summit plateau, a roughly circular area perhaps 100 yards across, relatively flat except for a raised dais at its center. Upon this dais hovered a swirling vortex of energy, the nexus point where Sovngarde connected most strongly to Etherius, the source of magic and cosmic power that Alduin had attempted to corrupt. The World Eater himself landed on the far side of the plateau, his massive form dwarfing everything around him. His 4 draconic servants took positions at the cardinal points, effectively surrounding the plateau and cutting off any possibility of retreat. Balan Hakoran. Alduin's voice vibrated through the very stone beneath Freydis' feet. Worthy enemy, you have proven, resourceful Davakian. Few have interfered so effectively with my rightful conquest. Rightful, Freydis challenged, her hand resting casually on her sword hilt as she assessed the tactical situation. You speak of rights while devouring the souls of the honored dead, while corrupting a realm consecrated to Shor since the dawn of creation. Alduin's laughter was a sound to break sanity, not merely loud but fundamentally wrong, as if reality itself objected to its existence. Need. Zolos Sizon Sulike. I am the firstborn of Akatosh, the Endbringer, the World Eater. All realms are mine to devour when time reaches its conclusion. And yet here I stand, Freydis replied, undaunted by the cosmic entity before her. Last Dragonborn as prophesied, your ending not the world's. Something flickered in Alduin's burning eyes, not fear, for such a concept was foreign to his fundamental nature, but perhaps the closest approximation possible for the firstborn of Akatosh. Recognition of fate, of prophecy's constraints, of the cosmic wheel turning inexorably toward a conclusion he had postponed but could not ultimately avoid. Zo unslad, zo nis ablan. The declaration echoed across Sovngarde, a denial of destiny itself. I am eternal, I cannot end. With that defiant roar, Alduin launched himself skyward, wings creating a thunderclap as they propelled his massive form above the plateau. The four lesser dragons followed, forming a rotating pattern overhead as Alduin began to invoke power beyond even his usual capabilities. Yoltor Shul. The fire breath shout that erupted from Alduin's maw was unlike any dragon fire Frades had faced before. It didn't merely burn, it consumed reality itself, leaving nothing but void in its wake. She rolled aside, narrowly avoiding direct impact, but even the peripheral heat seared through her armor, leaving spectral burns on the living flesh beneath. Frades responded with the one shout Alduin truly feared. Jorzahfrul. Dragonrend, the forbidden thumb created by mortal hatred and desperation during the Dragon War. The shout that forced dragons to experience mortality, to feel time's passage as mortals did, to know the existential terror of finite existence. The blue-white energy engulfed Alduin in mid-flight, dragging him inexorably downward. He fought against it with all his primordial strength, wings beating frantically against the concept of mortality itself. But even the World Eater could not resist the fundamental antithesis to draconic nature that Dragonrend represented. He crashed onto the plateau with earth-shaking force, stone cracking beneath his immense weight. The Nexus vortex at the center pulsed erratically in response, cosmic energies fluctuating wildly. Frades seized the opportunity, charging forward with her sword drawn, a blade of ancient Nordic design, enchanted with magic specifically attuned to draconic vulnerabilities. As she closed distance, Alduin recovered enough to swing his massive tail in a horizontal arc, catching her mid-stride and sending her tumbling across the plateau. She rolled with the impact, coming back to her feet in a defensive stance, blood trickling from her lip. The four lesser dragons continued their aerial pattern above, occasionally swooping low to unleash their own elemental shouts, forcing Frades to divide her attention between multiple threats. *Waldnakayasti. The whirlwind sprint carried her across the plateau in an instant, positioning her directly beneath the bronze dragon as it completed a diving attack. Her sword flashed upward, catching the creature's vulnerable underbelly, drawing essence that flowed like luminous ichor from the wound. The bronze dragon shrieked in pain and surprise, veering away to recover, as Frades immediately turned her attention back to Alduin. The World Eater was recovering from Dragonrend's effect, his form beginning to shimmer with the otherworldly energy that preceded flight. Fusro. Her unrelenting force shout struck Alduin directly in the face, momentarily staggering him and disrupting his return to the air. She pressed the advantage, closing distance once more, her sword striking with precision between the ebon scales of his neck. But Alduin was no ordinary dragon. Even grounded, even wounded, he possessed strength beyond mortal comprehension. His jaws snapped at Frades with the speed of a striking serpent, forcing her to abandon her attack to avoid being consumed in a single bite. His voice followed, Fokrehdin. The frost breath shout caught Frades as she retreated, encasing her left leg in ethereal ice that burned with supernatural cold. She faltered, momentarily immobilized, and Alduin seized the opportunity to rise again, Dragonrend's effect having diminished enough to allow flight. The Crimson Dragon chose this moment to attack, diving toward the vulnerable Dragonborn with talons extended. Only a desperate roll saved Frades from being impaled, though the maneuver cost her balance on her partially frozen leg, sending her crashing to the stone surface. Tidkloul. Slow time, a shout rarely used due to its extreme drain on a mortal's vital essence. But in this moment of vulnerability, Frades had no choice. The world around her seemed to decelerate dramatically, giving her precious seconds to break the ice encasing her leg and regain her footing before the effect ended. As normal time resumed, she stood ready once more, though noticeably weakened by the exertion of manipulating time itself. Alduin circled above, his burning gaze fixed on her with malevolent intelligence. High fin ag ost de yal davakian. The World Eater's voice carried absolute certainty. You will burn in my fire, Dragonborn. Your bones will join the countless others I have consumed across the ages. Frades knew the confrontation had reached a critical juncture. Alduin remained powerful despite her attacks, while her own strength was depleting with each shout, each evasion, each wound sustained. The four lesser dragons continued their coordinated assault, preventing her from focusing fully on their master. The moment had come to call upon the gift Ysgramor had bestowed, the partial connection to the resonance of valor. Raising her sword toward the sky where Alduin circled, Frades called out with both voice and soul. Heroes of SOVNGARD, champions of Shor, lend me your strength in this hour of need. Your valor against the World Eater, your defiance of oblivion itself, let it flow through me now. Below, at the mountain's base, the concentric circles of warriors felt her call resonate through their spectral forms. As one, they responded, channeling the resonance of valor not outward to push back corruption, but upward toward the summit where destiny unfolded. The golden light that had surrounded them coalesced into a vertical beam that shot skyward, striking the plateau where Frades stood. As it enveloped her, she felt the combined essence of Nordic valor throughout history infuse her being, not merging with her identity but temporarily lending her their collective power, their shared determination, their unyielding will. Alduin recognized the threat immediately. NIID. His roar shook the mountain itself. This realm is mine, these souls are mine, you shall not deny me. He dived directly toward Frades, all caution abandoned in favor of overwhelming force. The four lesser dragons followed, converging from different directions in a coordinated attack meant to overwhelm even a Dragonborn enhanced by the resonance. What happened next would be retold in Nordic legend for millennia to come. A moment when prophecy, valor, and divine will aligned in perfect harmony. As Alduin and his servants descended upon her, Frades released a shout unlike any heard before or since. Not a standard thumb taught by the graybeards or learned from word walls, but something new, born from the unique convergence of her dragonborn nature and the collective soul strength of SOVNGARD'S heroes. Silbromslen, Soul Stormflesh, a shout that manifested the collective soul essence of Nordic valor as physical force. The golden light that had enveloped Frades exploded outward in a spherical shockwave, striking all five dragons simultaneously. Where it touched the lesser dragons, crimson, emerald, bronze, and silver, their spectral forms simply disintegrated, returning to the formless void from which Alduin had summoned them. Alduin himself was hurled backward, his massive form crashing into the far side of the plateau with such force that the entire mountain trembled. Unlike his servants, he remained intact, though visibly diminished, scales dulled, fire dimmed, cosmic presence reduced to something almost comprehensible to mortal perception. The World Eater struggled to rise, wings damaged, essence leaking from wounds that glowed with the golden light of Nordic valor. He managed to lift his head, those burning eyes fixing on Frades with hatred beyond conceptualization. Zo Lo's Alduin, Zox Sarat du Nanko Lane, pride and defiance remained even in near defeat. I am Alduin, most mighty in all creation. I cannot be destroyed by a mere mortal, even one of dragon blood. Not by a mere mortal, no, Phrades agreed, advancing steadily toward the fallen titan, her sword gleaming with the same golden light that had diminished him. But I am Dragonborn, last of my kind, and I do not stand alone. Behind her spectral form appeared, transparent, ethereal but unmistakably present, Ysgramor with woothred raised high, Feldir and his fellow tongues who had first banished Alduin, Olaf One-Eye and countless other Nordic heroes whose valor had earned them places in SOVNGARD, not physically present on the plateau, but lending their essence, their strength, their determination to the Dragonborn who acted as their champion. Alduin's eyes widened with something approaching comprehension, perhaps the first time in his eternal existence that the concept of inevitable defeat entered his cosmic awareness. Jorzahfrul. Phrades unleashed Dragonrend once more, ensuring Alduin remained grounded for what would follow. Then, channeling the combined might of the Resonance of Valor through her blade, she delivered a single, perfect strike, directly into the nexus point at the center of Alduin's being. The World Eater's death was unlike any dragon's end witnessed on Nirn. There was no flesh to burn away, no skeleton to remain, no soul for a Dragonborn to absorb. Instead, Alduin simply unraveled, his physical form dissolving not into flames or ash, but into streams of primordial energy that flowed upward toward Etherius, each containing fragments of the countless souls he had devoured throughout his existence. These liberated soul fragments formed a spiral above the plateau, a luminous tornado of essence that expanded outward as it rose, returning to their rightful paths in the cosmic order. And at the tornado's heart, Alduin's fundamental nature, his role as World Eater, as Endbringer, separated from the corruption that had driven him to premature conquest. This core essence rose highest of all, disappearing into the infinite sky of SOVNGARD, returning to the divine plan from which it had strayed, to await the true end of days when its purpose would be fulfilled in the proper time, in the proper way. As the last traces of Alduin vanished from SOVNGARD, a profound silence fell across the realm. The spectral forms that had appeared behind Phrades faded, returning to their physical locations at the mountain's base. The golden light of the resonance dimmed, though it did not disappear entirely. Phrades stood alone on the summit plateau, sword lowered, the enormity of what had just transpired washing over her. She had fulfilled her destiny as Dragonborn, had faced the World Eater and prevailed, had saved not just SOVNGARD but potentially all creation from premature consumption. Yet she felt no triumph, no exultation, only a profound sense of completion, of cosmic balance restored. And beneath that, the awareness that she, still living, remained in the realm of the dead, disconnected from her proper place in the mortal world. As if in answer to this unspoken realization, a new presence manifested on the plateau. Not Alduin or his servants, but a figure both familiar and strange. Soon, the Bridge Guardian, now serving a different aspect of his eternal duty. Dragonborn, his voice carried both respect and formal authority. You have achieved what prophecy foretold. Alduin is banished, his corruption cleansed from SOVNGARD. The souls he devoured are freed to their proper destinations. Phrades bowed her head in acknowledgement. With the help of all who stand below, their valor, channeled through the resonance, made possible what I could not have achieved alone. And so it has always been, Tsun replied with wisdom accumulated across eternity. The greatest heroes stand on the shoulders of those who fought before them, who fight beside them, who will fight after them. He gestured toward the summit's edge, where the view now showed SOVNGARD restored to its full glory, mist-free, uncorrupted, more beautiful than mortal imagination could conceive. But now you must return to the realm of the living. Your destiny here is fulfilled, but your life's journey continues. Frades looked around the plateau, at the Nexus vortex now pulsing with stable, harmonious energy, at the traces of the battle already fading from the crystalline surface. How do I return? The portal at Skuldafn was one way, as I understood it. For ordinary mortals, yes, but you are Dragonborn, and you have earned Shor's favor through your actions here. Soon raised his massive axe, bringing it down on the plateau with a resounding impact. The stone beneath their feet trembled, then began to glow with the same golden light that had manifested the resonance of valor. When you are ready, I will return you to Nirn, to the precise moment and location from which your soul entered SOVNGARD. The world needs its Dragonborn still, for there are battles yet to be fought, though perhaps none so cosmic as the one just concluded. Frades nodded in understanding. Though Alduin was defeated, dragons still troubled Skyrim. The civil war continued to tear the province apart. Ancient threats stirred in forgotten barrows and deep caves. Her journey was far from complete. I would speak with those below before I depart, she requested, to thank them properly for their aid, and to carry their memory back to the world of the living. Of course, Tsune agreed. Descend the mountain. The heroes of SOVNGARD await you in the Hall of Valor, where celebration has already begun. When you are ready to return to Nirn, seek me at the bridge. The feast in the Hall of Valor that night surpassed any celebration in the realm's eternal history. Mead flowed from inexhaustible barrels. Platters of ethereal delicacies covered tables that stretched the hall's entire length, and music filled the air. Everything from ancient war chants to the most recent ballads composed in Skyrim's mead halls. At the center of it all sat Frades storm-crowned, the living Dragonborn among the honored dead, receiving the homage of heroes whose legends had inspired her since childhood. Ysgramor raised toast after toast to her valor. Feldir and his fellow tongues shared ancient knowledge of the thumb they had never imparted to any other. Olaf One-Eye presented her with a spectral amulet that, while it could not physically travel back to Nirn with her, would impart its protective enchantment to whatever amulet she wore in the mortal realm. Throughout the celebration, warriors approached to share tales, offer wisdom, or simply express gratitude for her role in protecting SOVNGARD from Alduin's corruption. Some had specific messages for descendants still living in Skyrim, words of pride, advice, or encouragement that Frades promised to deliver if her travels brought her to the appropriate locations. As the celebration continued, Ysgramor drew her aside to a quiet alcove near one of the great hearths, the same spot where they had spoken before the final battle. "You return to a world of trouble, Dragonborn," the legendary harbinger said without preamble. "Alduin may be defeated, but Skyrim bleeds from self-inflicted wounds. The civil war weakens Nordic strength when it should stand united against greater threats. I've tried to remain neutral," Frades admitted. "The Greybeards counseled focus on my destiny as Dragonborn, setting aside political entanglements. Wise until now." Ysgramor's ancient eyes held the collective experience of millennia, observing Nordic history from SOVNGARD. But with Alduin defeated, perhaps the time has come for the Dragonborn to help shape Skyrim's future, not just save it from destruction. You suggest I take sides in the civil war. I suggest you remember what you witnessed here, the power of Nords united in common purpose, the resonance of valor that turned the tide against the World Eater himself. Ysgramor placed a spectral hand on her shoulder. Skyrim divided falls to its enemies, internal or external. Skyrim united stands against any threat, as it has since the days of Atmora. Frades considered his words carefully. As Dragonborn, her voice carried weight among both Imperials and Stormcloaks. Perhaps she could bridge the divide, find common ground where others saw only irreconcilable differences. "I'll consider your counsel, Harbinger," she promised. "Though I expect neither Ulfric nor Tullius will make reconciliation easy." "Few things of value come easily," Ysgramor replied with a knowing smile. "But you faced the World-Eater and prevailed. Stubborn politicians should prove less formidable." The celebration continued well into what passed for night in SOVNGARD'S timeless realm. Heroes sang, boasted, wrestled, and drank in time-honored Nordic tradition, the recent threat forgotten in the joy of victory and renewed security. Eventually, as the feast began to wind down, Frady sought out Soon at the Whalebone Bridge. The time had come to return to the world of the living, to continue her journey as Dragonborn in Skyrim. The bridge guardian awaited her, massive axe resting on one broad shoulder. Behind him stood Ysgramor, Feldir, Olaf, and several other heroes who had played significant roles in the defense of Sovngarde against Alduin. "Are you prepared to return, Dragonborn?" Soon asked formally. Frady nodded, having said her farewells to the gathered heroes of the hall. "I am." "Then know this. Though you return to the mortal realm, a part of your soul will always resonate with Sovngarde. You have walked these fields in life, a privilege granted to no other mortal in Nordic history. When your natural span concludes, your place here is assured, not merely as Dragonborn, but as the vanquisher of Alduin, protector of the honored dead. Return with the glory of Sovngarde," Ysgramor added, clasping forearms with her one final time. "Let its light guide you through whatever darkness you face in the living world." "And know that we watch," Feldir said, his ancient eyes holding knowledge beyond mortal comprehension. "Not just in memory or spirit, but truly. The barriers between realms remain thin where you walk, Dragonborn. In your moments of greatest need, listen for the voices of the honored dead. We may yet have wisdom to offer." Frady thanked them all, emotion tightening her throat as she realized the unique nature of this farewell. Unlike those who died and passed to Sovngarde permanently, she would leave this realm with the knowledge of its reality, of the afterlife that awaited Nordic heroes, knowledge no living mortal was meant to possess. Soon raised his axe high, then brought it down on the bridge with a resounding impact that sent vibrations across all of Sovngarde. The space before Frady's began to shimmer, reality folding in upon itself to create a portal back to the mortal realm. "Return now to Nirn with this blessing. The voice of Sovngarde accompanies you in whisper and in shout. Shor's favor goes with you, Dragonborn, until you return to claim your rightful place among the honored dead." With these words ringing in her ears, Frady stepped into the shimmering portal. Her vision filled with golden light, then darkness, then the familiar snow-capped peaks of Skyrim as consciousness returned to her mortal body, still standing where she had entered the portal at Skuldafn Temple. The journey back to the world of the living took no time at all from Nirn's perspective. She had departed and returned in the same instant as far as any observer could tell. Yet she carried within her the experience of days spent in Sovngarde, of battles fought alongside the greatest heroes of Nordic history, of Alduin's final defeat atop Solcairn Mountain. As she began the long descent from Skuldafn to the world below, Frady felt changed in ways that transcended physical transformation. She had fulfilled her destiny as prophesied, had faced the World-Eater and prevailed. But more than that, she had witnessed the power of unified purpose, had experienced firsthand the resonance of valor that allowed heroes throughout history to achieve the seemingly impossible when they stood together, rather than divided. It was this lesson, as much as her victory over Alduin, that she would carry back to a Skyrim torn by civil war and ancient hatreds. The living might never witness Sovngarde as she had, might never experience the resonance of valor in its pure form, but its principle could still guide them, could still inspire them to set aside differences in service to a greater good. As the first light of dawn broke over the mountains of Skyrim, Freydi storm-crowned, Dragonborn and vanquisher of Alduin, began the journey home. Behind her, invisible to mortal eyes but vibrantly present to her enhanced senses, the light of Sovngarde continued to shine, a reminder of battles won, of allies gained, and of the eternal reward that awaited when her mortal journey finally reached its end. And in Sovngarde itself, the heroes returned to their eternal celebration, songs of the Dragonborn's victory already taking shape on Skald's lips, tales of Alduin's defeat growing more elaborate with each retelling. The Hall of Valor rang with laughter and boasting once more, the shadow of the World-Eater banished from its lofty halls. Ysgramor, first harbinger and Shield-Thane of Sovngarde, stood at one of the hall's great windows, gazing out at the restored beauty of Shor's realm. Beside him, Shor himself manifested more fully than he had in millennia, his hooded form solid enough to cast a shadow in the ethereal light. "It is done, then," the god said, his voice resonating at frequencies beyond mortal hearing. Prophecy fulfilled, the World-Eater returned to his proper place in the cosmic order. Thanks to the Dragonborn, Ysgramor acknowledged, and to the valor of those who stood with her. Yes, Shor's hooded face turned toward him, pinpoints of starlight visible within the darkness. The resonance I granted proved more potent than expected when channeled through one of dragon blood. An interesting development, worthy of further exploration. For the next crisis, Ysgramor asked with the directness that had characterized him in life and continued in death. "There is always a next crisis, old friend. The wheels of destiny turn without ceasing, and while some threats are defeated permanently, others merely retreat to gather strength anew." Shor's form began to fade slightly, returning to the more ethereal state that was his usual manifestation in Sovngarde. But for now, celebration is appropriate. Victory has been achieved, souls saved, cosmic balance preserved. As the god faded completely from view, Ysgramor returned his gaze to the unspoiled landscape beyond the hall. The rolling plains, crystalline mountains, and rivers of light that defined Sovngarde's unique beauty. Somewhere in that realm, the souls Alduin had devoured found their proper paths at last. Some to the Hall of Valor, others to different afterlives according to their beliefs and deeds in life. The first harbinger of the companions, greatest hero of Nordic history, Shield-Thane of Sovngarde by Shor's decree, lifted his drinking horn in a final toast, not just to the Dragonborn who had fulfilled her destiny, but to all who had stood against the darkness when it seemed insurmountable. "To valor," he said simply, "may it ever guide our people in life and beyond." Throughout the Hall of Valor, drinking horns raised in response, a thunderous chorus of agreement from the greatest heroes Nordic history had produced. They had faced the ultimate threat to their eternal reward and emerged victorious through unity of purpose, through shared determination, through the resonance of valor that transformed individual strength into collective power. It was Sovngarde's last song against Alduin, a harmony of heroism across the ages, a melody of defiance against cosmic threats, a rhythm of resistance that transcended death itself. And like all true Nord songs, it would be remembered, retold, and celebrated for eternity in the Hall of Valor, where mead flowed like water, feasts never ended, and the greatest warriors of Nordic history gathered in endless celebration of lives well lived and deaths well earned. In the end, that was Sovngarde's true power, not just as reward for Nordic valor, but as inspiration for it. A promise that echoed across the boundary between life and death, encouraging the living to face their challenges with the same courage, honor, and unity that had allowed the dead to defeat even the World-Eater himself. A promise the Dragonborn would carry back to Skyrim, to a land in need of healing, to a people in need of unification. The last song of Sovngarde transformed into the first song of a new era, an age born from the ashes of Alduin's defeat, shaped by the hands of those who had witnessed both the fragility and the strength of Nordic tradition. And somewhere beyond mortal perception, beyond even the understanding of the honored dead, Shor smiled upon his realm restored, upon prophecy fulfilled, upon the eternal cycle of challenge and response that defined existence itself, in Sovngarde, in Nirn, and in all realms where courage stood against chaos, where valor defied oblivion, where heroes arose when destiny called their names.